Welcome everybody. It is 7:30 p.m. Today is Tuesday, April 18th. We are here in Town Hall in room 206. Tonight is a Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing and general meeting. We have a pretty straightforward agenda tonight, but always some pretty important stuff. So without further explanation, let's get started right off. The first item on the agenda is the continuation of public hearing regarding business site plan number 94B, land filling and regrading application number 547, Bery Realty LLP, 118 Old Kings Highway South and 1302 Boston Post Road. Proposal on both properties to expand the parking lot for the existing veterinary office, including regrading of the property, installation of a stormwater management, and perform related site development activities. The 0.386 plus or minus acre 118 Old Kings Highway South property is located on the west side of Old Kings Highway South, approximately 485 feet north of its intersection with Queens Lane, and is shown on Assessor's map number 63 as lots 27, 28, and 29 in the service business zone. The 0.44 plus or minus acre 1302 Boston Post Road property is shown on Assessor's map number 63 as lot number 2, also in the SB zone, directly to the west of the 118 Old Kings Highway property south. Now, if you guys remember, this is the expansion of the Darien veterinary clinic that my dog goes to. They're going to expand the parking lot in the back, knock down whatever's in the back. And I think Harry Rochefeld here is just to give us a new site plan because you're moving one property line, like, I don't know, a foot or something like that.
Yeah,
So
pretty much for the
out.
record, Harry Rochefeld.
Anything I'm missing?
Nope. Jeremy Ginsberg, Director of Land Use. Harry Rochefeld from McCord Engineering came in last time, public hearing. 3 items remain, which Harry's going to address tonight, which is pulling back the parking to be a certain distance, at least 25 feet from the residential zone line. Lighting of the parking lot, just a little bit of lighting, even though the vet's office usually closes at 6. And tweaking of the landscaping. They brought in Kate Throckmorton from ELS to work on the revised plans. So Harry had submitted revised plans dated March 29th. He's here to present them.
Fantastic. Welcome, Harry.
Thank you. Harry Rochefeld, McCord Engineering, professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. Yes, there's only a few tweaks to our plan since the last time we met. Mostly was shifting the alignment of, or the layout of the park, the additional parking to be outside of a 25-foot setback from the residential zone. If you remember, Jeremy and myself were working to find exactly where that residential zone line was. We found that. It's been added to a proposed condition survey, which was also submitted, which was an additional item from the last meeting. So that's now all shown there, and the parking is all within that 25-foot setback from the residential zone, which you'll see as a dashed line on your plan set. And the parking is about 2 feet in up there. The additional parking spaces remain the same. I believe it was an additional 21 spaces we're adding for a total of 39. Stormwater management stayed the same. We only slightly reconfigured where the catch basins were to reflect the new parking layout. And we also shifted the hydrodynamic separator location to avoid one of the light poles that was added. We also slightly redid the grading on the north side of the parking area here to provide a sort of a shelf, I would say, a flat shelf for those evergreen screening trees along the northern property line. Other than that, not much has changed from our plan. Most of the comments were in regards to the landscape plan, which I have and I will present next, and providing that proposed condition survey, which is essentially the same thing you're seeing here with the zoning chart on it, showing that everything is in conformance once the lots are joined, which was going to be a condition of approval of this resolution. This is the planting and lighting plan prepared by Environmental Land Solutions. Unfortunately, Kate had a conflict tonight and can't make it, but I think it's pretty straightforward and I should be able to walk you through it. she's proposing 4 lights shown in the highlighted pink here. They essentially light up the entire additional parking lot. If you recall, there's lighting on the existing structure itself, which lights the existing parking lot. Also, the clinic's only open till 6 o'clock. That will not change as a result of this application. So the lights can either be on a timer or censored. We'll work that out with the client, but they're not intended to be used, all night long.
Did you say they're on timers? I'm sorry?
I said they could either be on sensors or timers. We haven't worked that out yet.
Okay.
I would probably prefer timers.
I think on BMW we did sensors. The neighbors wanted, someone walking in there, they wanted to turn on. And I don't know what we did with H&L Chevrolet.
We'll have to check. But
Yeah.
as Harry said, if they go off at 8 or...
Yeah, if planning and zoning has a preference, my client is fine with either option.
Okay.
All the green highlighted trees are all the new trees. Cater proposed 30 evergreens, 24 shrubs, and 3 deciduous trees. Most of the evergreen trees are located where we are trying to screen from the northern property line and from Old Kings Highway here. And then also from Shake Shack over here. And she's pretty much extending an existing hedge between our subject property and the animal store to the south. So that hedge is being extended, screening is being provided from the neighboring properties on all sides and Old Kings Highway. And there's also some low shrubs before the evergreens as well.
Okay.
That is essentially it on Kate's plan. It's a pretty substantial planting plan for this project, and I think it goes above and beyond what we discussed at the first meeting for the lighting and the planting, in fact.
And then you gave us another piece of paper, which is just what the tear sheets for the lights.
I think it's the book handle plan, yeah.
Photometrics, wow, you're a nice guy. Going all out.
That's,
Okay. Anything else?
I think that covers everything.
Okay. Good.
I just had one quick question, which I think I forgot to ask last time. Does this vet do any emergency procedures after hours? Like do they refer to the emergency vet up in Norwalk?
I believe that's the latter. What I've been told from my clients is strict 6 p.m. They
Okay. So they
don't do any
refer their
emergency after
emergencies
hours.
after hours. Okay, thank you.
Did the dogs too sleep there overnight if they have to?
Yeah, but if, they're not doing emergency surgeries and
No.
procedures in the middle of the night, stuff like that.
Not open for business after 6.
Okay, no. Jeff, you good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this application? Nothing? You good? Just check it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I'd said, I'd intend a motion to close. Jeff makes a motion, makes a second. All's in favor?
Yep.
Motion closed. Thanks, Harry. Good
Thank
job.
you. Have a good night.
But we might actually deliver on this tonight, and then if we do, then you'll save a week.
All right, they're all here for, they're here for.
Yeah, we'll fill you in.
Okay?
You're out, right, George?
All right, now go. It was good. Okay? Or we can do them while you're packing your legal stuff there.
Okay.
Next on the agenda is continuation of coastal site plan review number 367A, flood damage prevention application number 420A, land filling and regrading application number 526A, John and Amanda Spatola at 11 Searles Road. Proposal to construct additions to the north/west and east sides of existing single-family residence, construction of a new and realigned driveways and patio areas, and form related site development activities within regulated areas, including the regrading of the property, installation of a stormwater management and new septic system. The 1.89 plus or minus acre subject property is located on the south side of Searles Road at its northern intersection with Indian Trail, and is shown on Assessor map number 66 as lot number 69 and located in the R1 zone. Chairman, Vice Chairman Riley is going to recuse himself because he works at the same law firm that our applicant's attorney does. We opened up this application, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago or last meeting ago.
14th.
Yep.
Yep, actually a month ago.
And then we saw this same exact property about a year ago where they were putting a pool in or something like that.
Correct. This property came before the commission back in March and April of 2022. The commission approved additions to the house at that time with an approval date of April 5th, 2022. We now have a new property owner for the site and a revised site plan, or I should say a brand new site plan for the site. As I mentioned last time when the commission opened the hearing, the project has been designed in compliance with Section 810 of the regulations, 820 and 850 of the regulations. That's coastal site plan review, flood damage prevention, and land filling regrading. The application was referred out to Joe Canis of Ty and Bond for an engineering review. He sent comments in for the record dated March 1st. The applicant's engineer, Brian Nesteric of B&B Engineering, sent a reply dated March 6th to those comments provided by Mr. Canis. The application was also referred to the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and comments were received back on the application dated March 9th. Some of you may have noticed that there is construction going on the property currently. Our department, in connection with the building department, issued a building permit in February. The permit was issued on February 6th for interior renovations within the existing perimeter of the house with an approximately 90 square foot infill one-story addition to the house. All of that work is located outside of the flood zone with no associated regrading associated with that work.
Was that more the kitchen? It was a kitchen, right?
Correct. From what I understand of the situation, that 90 square foot bump out was to accommodate the remodeling of the kitchen.
Yep.
The application before the commission this evening, which includes the additions, more substantial additions to the house, a new driveway or reconfiguration of the driveways, some regrading, installation of stormwater management. A portion of that development is within the AE 13 flood zone. The majority of the additions to the house are located outside of the flood zone. However, there is associated regrading, grading associated with the work to the house. Amy Zavatakis is representing the applicant, and she is here this evening to present the application and answer your questions.
1 second, one last commentary thing. If you guys do remember, when we started, it was a totally separate application, got nothing to do with this one, but they wanted to put a pool in the other one, and that was the controversial item, and we landed up with fine anyway. I don't see a plan on this pool, but Amy can elaborate at one point in time. We'll go through. Ms. Eptax, welcome.
Thank you very much. Amy Zavatakis, Rucci Law Group, on behalf of the applicants John and Amanda Spatola. I appreciate the thorough summary of what's happened so far from staff, so that's going to make my job quite a bit easier. But just so we can orient, this is the existing conditions before the February building permit was issued. There's a small house on this property that is located on the southeast corner of the property. We've discussed already. I actually represented the prior homeowner when he came forward with a much more substantial addition to the property, including a pool on the western side of the property. This application was approved by the commission, but Mr. Patterson, who was the prior applicant, decided rather than moving forward with this project to sell, he bought a different house. So then the Spatolas purchased the property, and the proposal that they are coming forward with is for a much smaller addition, no pool, but there are some changes and reorienting of the driveways and some regrading on the property. None of the proposed addition is within the flood zone, but some of the stormwater management and some of the regrading is, as staff commented. I do have with me here tonight both Amanda Spatola, the property owner, Brian Nesrak from B&B Engineering, and Nick DeMaio, who's the project architect, so they can answer any questions you have. But frankly, I think the record really does speak for itself at this point. DEP has reviewed it. They have said that it complies with the regulations. We did receive the comments from the peer review engineer. Those were all responded to. Again, confirming that there was compliance. There were some small changes and suggested conditions in that report, all of which the applicant is fine with. Most of the changes have already been incorporated into the most recent set of plans that you've received. So honestly, I don't have all that much to say about the application unless there are questions from the commission, either for myself or for any of the project team.
Okay, the first thing I'm going to start out is we try to get the square footage of the house. Do you have that?
Yep, come on up.
Square footage house, and then our bedrooms and bathrooms and whatnot. Just state your name for the record.
Sure. I am Nick DeMaio, the project architect. So for the square footages,
Just for the record, Nick lives on the same street as me.
yes, we are neighbors.
We're neighbors. A lot of people in this town are.
So for the square footage of the addition, so just for the record, the existing house is 3,030 square feet currently.
303.
And the addition, the first floor is 1,056 square feet, the main floor. The second floor is 1,009 square feet, and there's a Four Seasons room, which is 322 square feet. We also have a small addition in the back, which consists of a garage and mudroom. So that is a total of 710 square feet.
How much is the garage out of that? Because
The garage is 575 of that, so that's going to be excluded from the total number,
Right.
which is, the total number of new square footage is 2,522. That would put the house at 5,551 total square feet, excluding the garages.
But includes a bedroom, right?
That, yes, yeah.
Okay. How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms?
It's 6 bedrooms now, and just give me a second to think about the bathroom count. We have
I think 5 full, 1 half, 2 halves, sorry. Is that right?
yeah, it's two halves and, yeah, 5 full, correct, yeah.
So we got, so we call it 5 and 2 half bath?
Yeah, so,
Okay. 5.2? I used to call, in my legal, I call it 5.5 plus 5. I don't know how I do it, but, okay. So the only thing you're doing right now is the kitchen bump out, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
The connection between for the kitchen, that's connecting to what was the garage, is now the part of the kitchen, so that's the connection that was spoke about earlier.
The garage is becoming livable space.
The garage is becoming livable space, and then as part of the new project, we're building 2 new garages, 2-car garage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the other thing, with regards to the driveways, are we closing both driveways or not? There's a new driveway on Indian Trail?
So it's a relocation of the driveway on Indian Trail.
Okay.
Currently, it goes because of the location of the garage
Yep.
goes straight down, that's probably the best way to put it. It will now go off to the east side of the property. The main driveway, which comes in from Searles, is in the same location as the existing.
Okay, because that was one of Joe Canis's questions. The driveway that's on the south side of the property and the north side of Indian Trail is being closed permanently,
Correct.
right? And you're opening up a new curb cut on
Indian Trail.
Indian Trail on the west side. And that's just a parking court over there, right? There's probably a mudroom door to the house or something?
Correct, that's where the new garages and the mudroom entry are. So that's sort of the back of house entry for the owner, really.
Okay.
The more formal entry is still off Searles Road in the front.
And that's with the parking court and all that stuff?
Right.
Okay. And just on the Canis's letter, that was the only thing that really stuck off the page? Elevations, as the only real questions he had. And provide written stormwater maintenance plans to be on file with the land records. You're doing that, right? Okay. I think I'm good for now. I'm gonna start off with, we'll start with these guys first. Good? Any questions?
No questions.
Abe?
Two questions. Is there going to be blasting required? Because there's a fair amount of ledge there. Is there any blasting as part of the construction?
I don't believe so, but Brian, are you able to respond to that question?
For the record, Brian Asteriak, B&B Engineering. Believe it or not, all the test bits that we did, we got down about 8-9 feet and didn't hit any ledge. Now, obviously, there's a big knob of ledge right next to the house.
Yeah.
If they do hit ledge, it's so close to the house, I really don't think blasting is possible.
Should just hoe ram or chip
It'll
away
have
at
to be
it?
hoe rammed, yeah.
Okay. So we'll just leave the resolution open on that issue,
Okay.
that they're allowed to do it, but I don't know if necessary.
Yep.
Okay. Then the other item was, talk to me about the basement a little bit, or the lower level. Is there a basement to this?
Sure,
thing?
yeah. We are going to attempt to do a basement pending the ledge rock. If we can get down there without having to do any blasting, because as Brian mentioned, we are concerned that because some of the house is sitting on that rock and we don't really, disturbing that would really disturb the house. So if we are able to, we would like to do a basement under the proposed addition in the front of the house. So there would be nothing in the rear with the garages or the mudroom. The basement would just be under the main addition in the front. And if you notice on the first floor plan, there's a Four Seasons room, and then there's sort of the main addition.
Where's the Four Seasons room?
The Four Seasons room is,
Do you have his?
do you have a? So on the first floor plan, the Four Seasons room is over here and over here, and the main addition,
What page?
yeah,
What page is that, Nick?
that's correct. So this is the Four Seasons room right here,
Which one are you looking at? A1, A4, something like that?
A 1.2. So the Four Seasons room is sort of set back a little bit from the front, and it's off to the right of the
Yep.
main house.
Got it.
So the Four Seasons room will not have a basement underneath it. That will just be a crawl space or potentially slab on grade. So the basement would just be under that main part of the addition off the front of the house.
If I can, I'll just point on the plan here. So it's the addition that's closest to the parking court off of Searles is the
Right.
area that would
That's-
potentially have a basement.
That's the area we're proposing a basement.
So that's the office study, living room, and entry foyer.
Correct, it would be underneath that.
Now, is that in a flood zone at all, or it's just next to the flood zone?
None of the proposed addition is within the flood zone. It's near the flood zone, but none of it's in the flood zone.
Okay. Is that basement gonna flood at all?
I
We
think
don't believe so.
that's part of the design plan and why we're holding open the possibility of a basement is that if it's not going to be doable, it won't be added, either because of ledge or because of flooding issues, but it shouldn't.
Okay. Because you're allowed to build and let the thing flood. We just kind of sort of approved that on Mansfield or Brookside, but they let them going sideways. Okay.
Well, I think the goal here is to keep the house out of the flood zone.
Right.
So that is one thing that's shown on the plan here. You can see it's going right up to the line. It'll have to be carefully designed by Nick to make sure you don't put the house in the flood zone.
Correct.
Okay. Jeff, any questions from you?
I'm good, thank you.
Anything we're missing, guys?
Don't think so.
I guess I'm gonna go back to your question, though. How does that work, Jeremy, practically? If you're at an elevation 13 feet and you're going down 8 feet for a basement, you're still at elevation 13 feet?
It's a very interesting question, Mike, because FEMA has given us different guidance on this, but one would think that once you get up to a certain point, right, you can go down as far as you want. As long as you're out of the flood zone,
Right.
you can go down. So if you're, FEMA is kind of rethinking that. This is still allowed the way they've designed it. As long as it's out of the flood zone, they can have a
You can
basement.
have a basement.
FEMA has recently started telling us, well, people who aren't in the flood zone can't have basements. And we say, can you show us that in regulations? Because what they realize is, people who aren't in the flood zone can still have flooding, but they can't regulate that, we've maintained, because if people aren't out in the flood zone, we can't regulate them as if they are.
Right. Okay.
So, as Amy's acknowledged, they have a drainage work in the flood zone, they have some driveways in the flood zone, but the house itself will be carefully designed, and once it's out, you could put a basement. But they are correct, they are likely to hit ledge rock and/or water, and that will dictate whether they put the basement, and what would be the deepest you would go for the basement?
So
9 feet?
we're proposing an 8-foot basement,
8
so, yeah, 8-foot ceiling height, so, yeah.
8 foot clear?
8-foot clear
Okay.
ceiling height.
What happens to a homeowner if they're underway on construction and if FEMA has given guidance that they might be making changes and then
Right.
somebody's, in theory, somebody along the way might be in mid-construction?
We did have that
What
back in
happens then?
2013. The new, I'll call it new flood maps came out in July of 2013. So in early 2013, we did see a number of people who kind of pushed their plans through as quickly as possible. Some of them elevated.
As long as they're approved per the regs
As long as they're
today?
approved, they're good to go.
Okay.
And we've seen that in the past.
It doesn't have
where-
to be constructed and CO issued?
That's
per-
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
The only reason why it, like I said, I think we approved it either on Mansfield or Brookside, those houses that are, I think it was on the little
the
rocky
corner?
road. Yeah,
Right at the corner.
yeah, well, one of the houses, but when that happened is they would design the house for the basement to flood, 100%. But then we threw on there flood vents and backup generators and some pumps and all that stuff, and the whole thing, but, you know, it just gets bigger.
Well, this is not being designed to flood, this is being designed to stay out of the flood zone.
Okay. Okay. So that we'll just note that. So
Yeah.
on your plan here, it says new basement, but you might hit something and it might get filled in.
Correct.
This is the same thing happened on Bay Street, next to Greaves, remember that one? They dug the hole and it filled it with water and they filled it in and it done in the basement. Okay. Did I check the neighborhood, see if anybody in the neighborhood wants to speak to this application?
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Are you putting in propane tanks or a generator on here?
There are propane tanks, yeah.
Where?
I don't think we should.
They're usually on the maps, right? And the same with generators?
No.
The generator would be, but the propane tanks wouldn't necessarily be, the generator would need to.
Are they going to be in-ground propane tanks or above ground?
They're in the ground.
Underground, okay.
Okay.
So that typically ends up being on the engineer's plan.
Yeah.
You know where you put them?
Sorry.
We can, what's that? Or we just have
Yeah,
to-
we didn't talk about the location of them.
Where's the boiler room?
We could certainly show them. If they were going to be put in the flood zone, which I would strongly not recommend, we would have to strap them.
Right.
But I think they'd be in the back.
I believe they're right around
Yeah.
here. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're back by the garages, so they're
So we
right in
can-
this area here.
We could certainly put them on a subsequent revision.
Okay, we'll just put that on when you submit the file.
Okay.
Where this is gonna be. There's an issue of some popping up where gas tanks are showing up above ground and they're 500 gallons.
These are intended to be below.
Okay. You're good? You're good? You're good? You're good. Okay, audience is good. Anything we're missing? We answered all Joe Canis's questions, right? His big question was the driveway. That's it, okay. With that said, entertain a motion to close. Adam makes a motion. Amy makes a second. All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
may deliberate on this tonight, okay? I don't
And
know.
watch you on TV.
Go home, watch it on TV, and say hi to Ken. Thank you. I see him walking all the time now. You made a walk off the train the other day.
Right.
Corner.
That is the close of the public hearing. Now we're going to go into the general meeting. The first item of the general meeting is update on Darien Commons project from Patrick McMahon of Federal Realty. Update on residential and retail leasing, as well as Equinox roof screen update. I don't see Patrick here.
Patrick might still be at ARB, we're checking.
Yeah, he's got to do the screening down there.
Yep, so he's working with that. The next agenda item, Dennis Lake is here. Dennis was at the ARB and he's
Oh, there he is.
back in order.
All right. Next up on the agenda, we'll make a motion to move the agenda around if he shows up, okay? Next item is the amendment to business site plan number 90P is imperfect. Darien Place LLC, amendment of special permit application number 258B, La Taqueria at 1077 Boston Post Road. Request for outdoor dining with associated landscaping and lighting. In our packets, we got a nice short letter from Dennis Lake, the chef and owner of La Taqueria. It says what he would like to do on page 2. He's got a layout that I guess is underneath the existing structure, I'll tell us, and then a picture of the structure in a couple of different versions. And then a cut sheet of the lighting. So, Mr. Lake, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Your restaurant's fantastic. I eat there every once in a while.
Thanks, we try hard.
Yes.
How did it go with ARB tonight? What was their general?
They love it. One of the ladies said that she would like to see planters, and she said if I didn't mind to get some sort of specs on them. I said no problem. She said if you don't mind, on top of that, get them on my little drawing that you guys have as well. I said no problem. For some reason, the chairs and the tables that I spec'd out a long time ago, they got lost in the little portal. I literally have them on my phone. I'm going to send them to them when I'm done here. She said everything is a go, but they want to see those.
We don't need to see your tables and chairs.
Okay. I mean, that's almost verbatim what they said.
Okay, great.
No, you're fine. I mean, we're trying to encourage outdoor dining because it makes more people on the street and more vibrancy to the town, which is a good thing. My only question is it looks like you're only having 16 seats. Are they just supposed to go underneath that existing shed, or are you going to have more outside the shed so I can sit in the sun?
So I kind of want to stay by the rules right now. I kind of feel like I'm the new guy in town, so whatever I say to you guys here, I would like where it's tried and true when you guys maybe come in for lunch or even for a cocktail or something. So if I have 16, I think it's manageable for myself. I'm not full service, so I don't have a slew of servers and head waiters and etc. So it's more counter service, which is more like come in, you order with me, and you sit down and we serve you from there. When we do get busy, we will have somebody outside who's dedicated to outside 100%. So make sure we give the same service outside as we do inside. I think 16 seats is a fair number. I think it's not overkill, and I think for the size of the pergola that's out there, I think it fits well.
So they're all going to be underneath the pergola? That was my only question.
Yes.
Okay.
Just for the commission's information, anything more than 16 seats requires additional parking. Up to 16 seats outdoors, no additional parking is required. When
So
you
he
go,
got coached.
Wow.
when you go over that 16 number, that's when additional parking comes into play.
Okay, cool. It's a general meeting item, so we can ask questions here and then give them a thumbs up. Any questions from you guys?
No.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
I am just wondering, did you lease this space? I wasn't never sure why it was built there. Was it built as part of your space, or
Correct.
did you lease it with that space?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
It was kind of put together right, I think, in the beginning of COVID. I took it over about a year before I opened up. And it was something that I think the landlords wanted to do as kind of a sign of good faith for kind of a restaurant coming in there, because I know they've wanted a restaurant there all along.
Good.
Fantastic, okay.
All right.
With that said, can we get a straw vote to, for
All
this?
good.
All good.
George makes a motion, Amy makes a second, all in favor?
Yeah.
You got your outdoor seating.
All right, thank you so much.
Good luck, man.
All right.
When are you gonna open it?
tomorrow?
Good answer.
Good answer.
Good answer.
Great answer.
Thank you guys, have a good night.
Thank you.
You gotta
All right.
get the to-go margaritas. That's the secret.
Maybe-
I drink them there. Had a long night. Next on the agenda, discussion regarding accessory dwelling units, ADUs. At our meeting on March 7th, I think was the date of our meeting? Yeah, our meeting on March 7th, which was, I said, the working meeting, is what we kind of called it. We discussed the ADU stuff for, I don't know, maybe half an hour or so. Dave Keating, sounds like he watched it on tape and paid attention to us. And he drafted up two proposals, or actually a memorandum and then a proposal of the draft regulations, based upon what he heard us talk about at the meeting. So with that said as an introduction, Dave, I don't think needs an introduction, and he can take it from here. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Dave Keating, former zoning enforcement officer here, and now I'm retired, but I'm glad to work with the Planning and Zoning Commission on things like this. So I did draft up some regulations that the commission could consider. The first note in there is that since the state statutes clearly define accessory apartments under Public Act 21-29, and the Planning and Zoning Commission and the RTM opted out of that state requirement and that use of the term. From here forward, I'd like to try to use the term accessory dwelling unit instead of accessory apartment. So if you catch me referring to them as accessory apartments, correct me, please. But it's I think it's a legal distinction that we want to make and want to include in any adoption of regulations that the commission makes.
What I remember, isn't the word accessory dwelling unit or accessory apartment someplace in our zoning code, and we want to switch that in other spots too? Or was that, because we've talked about this conflict issue a couple different times. Or maybe you just scanned it. I thought it was someplace else in there.
We'll flip through and see if it's in there, and I think that's the type of thing we need to go through as we continue, you know, whether it's next month or the month after, refine this. That's one of the things we'll take a look at.
Okay. Just a search and replace type of thing.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So the accessory dwelling units would be a new definition to be added to the Darien zoning regulations, with a note that they're not the same as accessory apartments as referred to in the state statute. And the other amendment to the definition would be the term transient or transient resident, because right now the regulations say you cannot have transient residence, but it doesn't define it. So I just defined it using some other regulations from other towns of being 90 days or less. Would be a transient resident.
When you say transient, it's in our regulations or the state regulations you're talking about?
It's in neither.
Okay.
It's not in the state definition, it's not in our regulations now, although we use the term transient in our regulations.
That's
and we
right,
have
that's
rulers and borders, but not transients.
Okay.
So I just thought it would be appropriate to put that in, because one of the provisions later on is that if you allow accessory dwelling units, do you want them to be rentable for vacationers? Do you want them to be rented out a week at a time or a weekend at a time? Do you want it to be an Airbnb or a vacation rental by owner type of use? And I don't think that was the intent of the commission. I think it would be to create a residence, a dwelling unit for people to live in town, not an Airbnb type thing.
Agreed.
So,
Are there any restrictions on Airbnb for your principal residence?
We don't have Airbnbs in our town.
Can't.
They're not allowed.
It's not allowed?
Nope.
So then how would you do it? And if it's not allowed in the town, how would you do it in these structures?
He's saying you.
No,
he's
people do
assuming-
it now, and they get their hands slapped. But this is, he's calling it 91 days. If you're here for June, July, and August, that's legal. If you're here for a week in July, and you rent a room on Monument Point, that's not illegal. That's not legal. Right?
Dave, do you want to talk about, I know you and I spent many years talking about
Monthly rentals.
Airbnbs, and how
Yeah.
long before,
I don't know.
what was the general policy we had? Because if, for example, if you own a house, you can rent it out to someone and they can live there for a year or 6 months. How did we fine tune?
at one point, 60 days was something that the Zoning Board of Appeals had mentioned in one of their findings about a property up on Mansfield Avenue. But that was 20 years ago, before the Airbnb type or short-term rental type use was in effect. I had a number of conversations with people that said, from a legal perspective, if it's more than 30 days, then they become almost like squatters, and they are then residents, and so we should use the definition of 30 days. And I thought, well, that's just, in this sense, for creating an accessory dwelling unit, the people down in the Roten Bay or elsewhere in town are gonna rent for the summer, and I don't think we wanna have houses rented for 30 days or 31 days to try to make it legal. So there is no definition right now.
Great.
And to me, it would be easier to say, let's refer to it as 90 days or less as transient. And if people want to debate that or change that or whatever as part of the public hearing, you can hear their input. Or if you think that there should be a different number, that'll be fine, but.
Let's try to just stay focused on ADUs for the moment,
Okay.
because I think we're gonna, if we go down what you're talking about, you're gonna go down a totally different road.
Yep.
And we're never gonna get through this.
Yep. So I got the sense that the commission does want to allow for accessory dwelling units, and they want to make the process fairly simple and direct. And so initially, I had thought that we would add accessory dwelling units as a special use under section 1057, under section 1050, but that would require a public hearing. And the commission said, no, we don't want to require a public hearing for each and every accessory dwelling unit. So instead, the description and the allowable use would be under section 400, which are most of the residential zones. There's a few residential zones that aren't included in those. Roten Bay district, the special needs district, and I think there's one other that allows for multifamily residential already.
Is that the active senior
Yeah,
one?
but it's the R1/2, R1/3, R1/5, R1 and R2 zones are covered by section 400.
Okay.
And so the way I took it from the discussion in March, properties that are a half an acre or larger would be allowed by staff review for an administrative permit. Properties that are a half an acre or less than half an acre, it's getting a little bit tight. And so the Planning and Zoning Commission would want to see those, not necessarily to have a public hearing, but at least to have the commission make the decision of whether they met all the rules and regulations. It would still be an administrative type review or ministerial type review where the commission could say, okay, here's the requirements. Did you meet the health and safety requirements? Did you meet the building code? Did you meet the parking requirement? Did you meet the setback requirements? You're going to comply with whatever else the standards are, and the applicant can stand here and point out how they have complied with each of those requirements, and if they meet all the regulations, you have to approve it. If they don't meet any of the regulations, you can't approve it.
Okay, now hold on a second. You're correct, but the last meeting we talked about this, I said 1 acre, George said a half an acre. So do you want to take a straw poll on a half an acre or 1 acre be the dividing line?
Half.
I don't really care.
So he's half.
No, I mean, if I have to vote, I'd go 1 acre.
You go 1, okay.
Yeah.
I guess the
Give us
question I'll
one
have
hand.
is,
Take it.
the most important thing I think with regards to being able to have a public hearing is the likelihood that there's gonna be a parking problem or encroachment problems on the neighbors and the streetways. So definitely a half acre, I'm thinking of my neighborhood where you've got houses and detached garages and a driveway that's just one shot in. The 2 parking spaces for the house is in the garage, and then the accessory dwelling unit space would be on a driveway that's clearly in a side setback. So like those type of things, we definitely want to see, I think. And so half acre for sure. I would think an acre zoning, the majority of the time administratively, they're not pushing the envelope.
So you want to see a half acre?
Definitely a half acre. I don't know that we need to see an acre? Would you,
No,
would you
what's-
agree that you can most likely get, should be able to account
Yeah,
for
I
the
think-
parking and?
When Dave and I spoke on the phone, we spoke about this a few times, and we said, what's likely to be the biggest issue, the biggest concern is parking.
Parking.
Let's go with Jeff first. What do you want, a half or one?
I'd go for one, but, I mean, that's me.
All right, so you're one, I'm one, he's one, you're a half, you're a half. Right?
Mhm.
So it sounds like we're moving that from a half an acre to an acre.
Okay, that's a simple change.
Great.
You can do that. And it
Okay.
doesn't mean that they're gonna require public hearings. The way this draft is, it's just a site plan approval.
Anything
Right.
less than an acre requires a,
So if you read here, if you go to his blue sheet where it's 4030, and correct if I'm wrong, if it's an acre, now it says half, if it's an acre, everything's done in the office, right?
okay.
If it's a half an acre, or a third of an acre, or a fifth of an
Yes.
acre,
We
there's
would-
no special permit, there's no site plan review, it's a general meeting item.
Well, it's called site plan approval.
And
And
gets,
basically, it's a detailed map or drawing that shows existing structures, proposed structures,
Yep,
existing
yep,
parking,
yep,
proposed
yep, yep.
parking, and it labels everything so that there's a detailed record of it. It's gonna be, in my mind, it would be the same requirement if someone's in the 2-acre zone. They still need to give a drawing that's gonna be the documentation that says, here's what I propose to do, and here's how it's gonna comply, and the staff would review it and say, yes, this complies, and that's what you're allowed to do.
So the,
right, so it's
the
just,
docs are the same, it's just under, they have to come before us and say that, prove it.
right,
Yeah,
that's
the
what I
other
want to
ones they
make sure
can do
we're
in
on
the
the same
office.
page.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a,
It's exactly what
Higher
Zachary
step.
did tonight,
Yep,
right, it's a general meeting, because your pink sheet says no public hearings.
correct, no public.
Which I got that, because a public hearing, you could do it if you really had to, but you gotta notify the neighbors and lawyers involved, it's a hassle, right? If it's a general meeting item, they come in, they show us your stuff, we say yes, we vote on it, there's no, you're not drafting resolutions, right?
That's great. It would just be a simple letter going back to the homeowner. Hey, on April 17th, the commission reviewed your plans, which showed the location of the new kitchen, the location of the conforming parking space, and work out the details as part of the building permit. Congratulations.
Right, so it makes the agenda, it makes it into the newspaper that they approved the ADUs, and we're off to the races.
The fee doesn't change if they gotta come before us at a general meeting, right? It's the same fees, same paperwork and everything.
Same fees.
We still want to, I don't want it to make it more arduous on somebody from, with a half than somebody who's got a 1, apart from just having to come in front of us.
That's correct. It would be the exact same review process.
Just they gotta add
If
the
they had a
added
bigger
step
property,
of the
staff
general.
would look at it. They clearly have more room to work with, so it's probably going to be a little easier versus the example Amy gave was a good one. I have a parking space that go into the garage, but the ADU requires a separate space. Do I need a separate curb cut? Do I need a little bump out coming out of the garage?
Yeah.
Do I do something? And oftentimes, that may be the thing that says, it doesn't fit on this property. You can't fit the conforming parking.
Okay, so relative to your note about the fees, that's important, we'll get to that in a minute, because I think we might set a different fee for this thing, I don't know what it's gonna be, but I mean, I don't know what the fee is. I know that the special permit's expensive, but the regular fees.
Yeah,
not.
we haven't even gotten to that point yet.
And the only other item I just want to touch on before we move to the next point is relative to setbacks in accessory dwelling units or accessory structures, a setback in a in a 1 acre zone is different than in a half acre zone. So that's something you also want to scrutinize better, which goes to Amy's point about the cars parking in the setback line.
Right, and so if somebody had a full acre of land, but they're in the half-acre zone, they get the benefit of having reduced setbacks compared to 1 acre. So the setbacks are determined by the zoning district where the proposed work is located. And in some properties, they're actually in 2 different zones. So if they propose the building on the front part of the property, they only have a 15-foot side yard. If it's on the rear part of the property that's in a 1 acre zone, it's a 25-foot side yard setback requirement. Our zoning regulations are very specific that you go by the zoning district, not by how much acreage you have. And that was another point is that I got from the commission's discussion. You want to make sure that the structure that becomes lived in, because it's an accessory dwelling unit, complies with the setback requirements for a principal structure in that zone. Whatever zone is, if it's in the 1/5 acre zone, the side yard setback's only 8 feet. If it's in the 2 acre zone, the side yard setback is 35 feet. So you're not varying or changing anything, it just, whatever zone it's in, it needs to comply with those setback requirements. If it's a detached structure that was built for parking or for storage, in some of the zones, there's a reduced side yard and rear yard setback requirement, and those structures would not be eligible to be converted into finished space or living space. That's the tenor of the discussion that I got from your previous meeting and from the people shaking their heads. I think that's what the regulations reflect, and that's what you want.
Yeah.
Okay,
If you got a garage right on the property line, but you want to convert it, you got to move it.
okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the example I was gonna use is, there's that house up on Mansfield, and there are a lot of freestanding garages. Freestanding garage, the setback is in 1/3 acres, 5 feet.
Right.
So if it's a 2-story garage, and they have a loft up there that the kids hang out in, we're not making those into bedrooms.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Or if it's legally non-conforming, or if the zoning board of appeals granted a variance for the detached storage structure. And the Board of Appeals said, in this case, you only needed to be 3 feet from the property line. We don't want to, I put in a paragraph that says, you don't get to convert that into living space.
I got that.
We want to
Okay.
we want to try to cover those what-if situations so that people won't try to stretch it too far.
Is this the time for the covering the what-if situations that we talk about enforcement? People that, say, because I see the biggest issue being parking. Yeah, I did carve out a portion for over here, but nobody ever does, and there's 5 people that are jammed in there and they're all parking on the street. Is this the time that we talk about envision enforcement, or no?
I think I understand that that's an issue that you're concerned about, and
Yeah.
from my experience, it's an issue that I'm concerned about all the time. Because I know whatever the commission adopts on paper, the staff has to make sure it works out in the long term.
Yeah.
What I envision is, as part of the application form and the application procedure, there would be a space for the applicant to demonstrate on the plan where the parking spaces are going to be. And a notation with that on the application form might be that if one or more of your parking spaces are in a garage or in a building, you cannot fill up that building or garage with stuff and still call it a parking space, because that has been a problem.
Or your accessory dwelling unit spot can't be immediately behind a garage bay.
Right,
That would
or
require
that tandem
constant
parking
docking
space.
of- yeah.
Which is already in the regulations,
Yeah.
but I think it needs to be reinforced as part of the
Yeah.
application,
Yeah.
so that each applicant knows. And part of the reason that I think a site plan approval is important for some of these, especially those properties that are tight, is so that the applicant
Flush
is
this out.
standing here in front of the commission
Yeah.
saying, yes, I understand, I cannot park in the side yard, or have my tenants park in the side yard, or
Yeah.
they can't park in the driveway in the front yard. And the zoning regulations already have a provision for that. If your driveway, if your parking spaces comply with the front yard and side yard setback requirements, that's where your parking is supposed to be. Additional parking spaces can be in the driveway leading from the street to there, but those are the additional spaces used occasionally, not
For guests,
routinely.
yeah.
So when you have guests come over, or somebody stops to make a delivery, they can park in their driveway temporarily. The staff is not going to try to enforce that kind of a.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, so I think in your pink memo, we're up to like line 46 and 47. I think we're done with page 1. I think we got through that. So now we're up to, we just did 403N and 403O, so now we're up to 407C, right?
Yep. Right, which is the actual standards. Section 407C would be the actual listing of the standards and requirements. And one of the things that had been discussed a lot by housing proponents and housing opponents has been, what size should the accessory dwelling unit be.
I like
did not
how you
include
have it
anything
as,
about a minimum size.
yeah.
Because as soon as the commission says the minimum size has to be, whatever number you pick, somebody's gonna argue that you pick that number to make it high, to make it too costly, and you're trying to fight against
Yep.
affordable housing. So I didn't put in a minimum.
That I
I've
agree
talked
with
to a
you.
number of people, 400, 500 square feet is a small apartment, but it's certainly livable for some people.
It's a
It's
great
basically the
esti-
size of a two parking
It's a
spaces.
great studio apartment in Manhattan.
Yep.
They got them in Stanford too.
Right. We're not Manhattan,
Go
but,
to, well, the Irby in Stanford, they got one of 500 square feet. You're fine.
and then, so no minimum. And then the other was the maximum. The bigger you allow the units to be, the more they're gonna rent for, the more they're gonna cost to build, and they're gonna rent for more. I included a provision like in the state statutes that says the accessory dwelling unit has to be smaller than the principal dwelling unit. That's just a logical thing. We're not trying to have people build duplexes. And then the other one was how many square feet should be the max? Should it be 1,000 square feet? Should it be 1,200 square feet? Jeremy and I discussed it, and we ended up with 1,000 square feet. That's a lot of
Yeah.
extra dwelling unit.
Does anybody have an opinion on that? Because, I mean, my apartment in New York City was 832 square feet. It was a big one bedroom. I'll never forget it because it was a great spot. But 1,000 square feet is good. You should come. The outside terrace was
too late,
650 square feet. It was awesome. But Westport made their number like 1,700 square feet,
Yeah,
That's big.
which is,
I'd tend higher. Like, if you want to do an in-law suite for your in-laws, you're gonna stuff them in 1,000-foot box.
right, see, first I
With
thought.
a kitchen
Yeah.
and a family room and a place for the grandkids to come over and, like, no.
See, the first thing I thought is that 1,000 square feet was too big. Then I thought about a 2-bedroom unit above a pool house.
Right.
Because some of the pool houses we've seen are like 1,600 square feet, in town, so.
What's a two-car garage?
A two-car garage is roughly 20 by 20.
Yeah.
It'd be 2 parking spaces, it'd be 400 square feet. A typical two-car garage, however, is 24 feet by 24 feet to
Yeah.
give you room to open the doors on the
Yeah,
side
yeah.
and room for
Yeah.
workbench at the end and trash barrels and so on.
Yeah.
So 24 by 24 is more like 525 square feet or so.
Well, we also have the governor of no more than 20% coverage, so that's still envelope, still as a guardrail around not overbuilding on a site.
It still ends up being the second floor.
Yep.
It's second floor doesn't change your issue. The other question, the other governor, using your word over here, was the percentage of the house size. Like other towns made it can't be more than 30% of the house. So if your house is 3,000 feet, 30% of 3,000 is a number. It's 900 square feet. So you didn't put that in
I
here.
deliberately didn't because it gets confusion. If somebody wanted to build a bigger accessory apartment, their solution is to add on to their house.
Yeah.
So the 3,000 square foot house becomes 3,600 square feet. Now they can build a 1,200 square foot apartment if your limitation is 1/3 of the.
No, it would be both.
Yeah.
It'd be
So
30.
yes, you could put in both, but
So we should give this one.
it was
thought.
simpler to have just a single number. Or,
No.
I mean, the commission could opt to have not a limitation and just say, we don't want to get into a fight. Somebody wants to build 1,082 square feet because that's the size of their building, we're not going to deny the application because of 82 square feet.
Yeah, but we
But
have
we don't wanna
we have
encourage-
1,600 square foot houses in town,
Yeah, we do.
right? There's 16, you can build a 1,000 square foot ADU next to it. I mean, that's.
That's building 2 houses on the property. It's no longer.
Right,
an
that's
ADU.
it's a
Small
two-story,
duplex.
it's a garage that's 2 stories.
Yeah.
Like my father-in-law's got a garage in his house that's in the back, he can make that into 2 stories on the same footprint, doesn't change your lot coverage,
Yeah.
but you can have a 2-story ADU in the back, that's 1,000 feet, that's why I think you kind of sort of
Or if you
need
have a big
both.
house, a 3,000 square foot house, and you say, you know what, I'm just gonna split it down the middle, put a kitchen on the other side, you'd have 1,500. Is that possible too?
Which is legal, but then it makes it 50%, that's why I think you need the other governor too, the other regulation. But let's start at the beginning. What do you want to do about this square footage of the house? Let's go with the Realtor first.
I could see maybe if you're having a max, maybe allow a little bit more than that. Maybe like 1,200 square feet, you know. I could see upping it a little bit.
What's the fireman say?
I'd say under 15.
Under 15, so you went from 1,000 to 1,200, you went to 1,500.
Mike, I have a question. If you have one that, let's say we set the limit at 1,000, but you have a 1,200 square foot print, and you turn it into two 600s, and then it still satisfies, and say, assume that still satisfies all the parking requirements, is that okay?
2 600 square foot ADUs, we're
Yeah.
saying no to that. That comes up, you can't do 2.
It would be one per property, but if you had a house, 1,800 square foot house, could you do, you know, an upstairs, downstairs type thing? Sure.
Yeah. So we're only doing one ADU per property. So
Correct.
we can't just, because I don't want to pick a level that then we see people start splitting because they just go a hair over it or something, and they could eke in two. If the level's 12 and they got 1,250, then they could do two 725s.
No, we're right now, we're one ADU per property, not
Okay.
2.
I would say it's a little bit bigger than 1,000. I'd be 12, 15. It's fine for me.
Mike?
I'm at 15, but are we contemplating these as connected structures? Like,
No,
like
we
you could
could do-
split the first floor from the second floor? I
You
mean, we're
could split the-
creating multifamily in town?
The ADU could be internal to the house, or it could be a
I
detached,
don't love that at all.
structure.
I think it should be a detached structure.
That's why we're here, is to get
That's why we're here to
Because
talk
you can
it all out.
imagine basement unit, okay, great. Kind of an up-down type thing, side by side, pool house, detached,
Converted garages.
converted garage, if you got a big enough property that parking still complies. So that's kind of kicking around all the ideas is, what ideas, and as you say, maybe we don't want. a
I mean,
house
then it
jumping.
starts to look, you know, like we're in a city. We're
Right.
no longer in a town.
He didn't do it here, but we've done another PowerPoint presentation where it said ADUs come in all shapes and sizes. And it's the second floor of a house, the basement of a house, the garage of a house, you know. Remember the one time I said the doctor's office, like the doctor's office is to the left and it's to the right? You know, that's the way they're contemplated. I mean, they call them in-law suites, where it's like, you know, mom and dad's bedroom is on the other side of that wall.
Yeah, no, I get that. I
Yeah.
don't know, I think if we're doing it.
That's
by-
why we're here.
Right, but I think if we're doing it by floor, it's a little different.
Right, your point is that first level's my house, second level's somebody else's.
It's
It's two-family house on top of
two-family
each
house,
other.
yeah.
But that's where, in my mind, that's where the 30% governor comes in,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
right? Because if it's a 1,200 square foot, if it's a 2,400 square foot house,
And you're making
you can
two
split it
1,200.
first floor, second floor, then they're even Steven. That I don't like,
Right, I agree with that.
okay? So you're a little bit higher than 1,000.
Maybe we do have
What-
both.
what do you say,
a max
George?
and a-
I can see up to 1,500 in the right, right zone. I don't see that in a 1/3 zone, but I can see it in an acre zone, et cetera. But I do think that governor you're talking about is critical. I don't think I'd want to see it more than 30%, maybe 40% of the
Yeah.
principal residence.
I think
Okay.
we might need both.
Yeah,
We
I think you
you're
need
right.
both. And me personally, I'm 1,200 square feet. I mean, we have a developer here that builds apartments all the time. Trust me, 1,200 square feet is a pretty big apartment.
Okay.
You know,
So do you wanna go-
1,500 square feet, you're getting it, that's a legit 2-bedroom. It's a 3-bedroom.
With the right flow, that's a great little house.
That's
That's a great house.
Well, we can always
With the right
limit
flow,
the
that's a great
maximum number
house.
of bedrooms though, right?
Yeah, we can. We can do maximum number of bedrooms. All right, you guys okay with 1,200 square feet versus 1,000 versus 1,500?
So are we doing attached or detached?
Right now, it's open book.
Well, another point he made later on in the documentation was that, and I think it's a good point, we can always loosen this, but it's harder to tighten it over time, right? So if we start, let's say, at 12, which I think is also a pretty decent size, we could always loosen it to 15,
Correct.
you know? But if we
Right.
can't go, if you start at 15, it's going to be hard to move it to 12. If we all of a sudden have 3 or 4 of them, now they're non-conforming, now we're stuck with them. So 12 seems like much like a happier medium.
12? You good, fireman? I mean, you gotta fight the fires on these things.
Okay. I get, yeah, sure.
Okay, so make 1,000 to 1,200.
Okay.
Okay, now let's talk about the 30%, 40% governor. I think 30% is the number that has been bounced around other towns. I don't know if you saw that in your research. I don't know if, I've definitely never seen 50%, because that's way too, that's,
Cutting a house in half.
yeah, that's two houses in one.
Yeah.
But if you take a, 2,000 square foot house, 30% is 600 square feet, right? You're still under, because you were gonna have both. It's the lesser of the two, right?
But you need to comply with both standards.
Correct.
You don't get to pick which standard, you get to, you have to comply with both.
So a 2,000 square foot house can have a 30%, and I'm using 30% because it's easier math, it can have a 600 square foot accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
It can't have a 1,200 square foot accessory dwelling. He's saying yes.
They could always come before us in the normal process to build it, right?
No.
Or we would just say no. They wanted to build, in that case, they wanted to build a 620 square foot ADU because of the footprint of their garage for whatever reason, that we would just say no.
Yeah, well, they can take, of the footprint of the garage, you
They
can
just
take
leave some of it
200
off.
square feet, it's,
Okay.
landlord storage or something. I mean, I think in our town, I think the very few of these are gonna be rented out to third parties. I mean, if you go on MLS or you go on the listing system now, you can click on a house and it says 2 bedrooms in the pool house. That's technically an ADU, but it doesn't have a kitchen. I mean, we had the one guy that came here in Thanksgiving, he wanted a lot of his family to be able to sleep in it. We had the house down in the bay where they built a pool house, and the second floor was bedrooms because they had 7 kids. It's kind of sort of not legal today, maybe it is legal, but I can tell you, a lot of those garages are in the setback, so it wouldn't be an ADU and they don't have kitchens.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, he gets into this in the backside where it talks about legalizing these things in some of the ones that already exist. I mean, there's plenty of these in town already. I would like to get them legalized, and I would like to get credit for
I
them.
guess that's a good question for staff. Once these regulations go in place and somebody comes forward and says, I'm just building a pool house. I'm not planning on putting a bedroom in here, or, this kitchen is for, the pool house. This is not for a rentable accessory dwelling unit. Are we just gonna overlay and make sure that pool house that used to meet the accessory structure, side setbacks, and they were allowed to do all of those, but now that we've got this regulations, we're gonna say, no, now you gotta meet all of this.
Right, so we do see that now. There's
Yep.
constant enforcement relative to people potentially living in places that have not been approved as
Yep.
dwelling units. There are grandfathered units throughout town, predate zoning, and that's fine, and oftentimes that, for us, we will get complaints, and we say, well, that unit's predate zoning, it's been determined, usually when Dave was in here, and we have some paperwork saying
Yep.
that's a complying unit, and it's probably noted on the assessor's card as well.
Yep.
There are units out there that are not legal, but this would give people the opportunity to come in. Of course, they'd have the rules, so the
Yep.
theory would be is if they comply with the rules, likely to get approved. If they don't comply, setbacks, parking, whatever it is, we could not approve it, and we would continue to say it's not a legal apartment, nor are you able to turn it into one because you can't meet these 6 rules.
But would it make you be more critical of the application for just a pool house?
No, I think the same thing would hold is,
Yeah.
people will continue.
To just build those
There's a house,
structures
I think there's a house down the street from you now that's,
Yep.
has a pool house as part of the house, and it meets all the setbacks. Could they propose to put an oven in there? Yeah, they'd come to either
Yeah.
staff
Yep.
or the commission. In that case, let's say it's over an acre, and staff could say, yep, you can have the
Yep.
oven.
Okay.
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 So is 30% a good enough, Governor?
I think so.
Because we can make it higher if we want to later.
We could
Okay.
always loosen it.
Got it?
All right, so 30%, I think maybe you should go to 50%. Because if somebody has a 3,000 square foot house, and they're gonna use some of that house for the accessory apartment, or the accessory dwelling unit, I'm sorry. If they, then they'd be taking 1,000 square feet for the accessory dwelling unit, and living in 2,000 square feet. So then they would comply with the 50% rule, but not a 30% rule.
Right.
So I think a 50% rule will be easier, but to the point that you made before, if we say 30 now, we can always change it to 50% later, more easily than we can say, oh, you used to do 50, now you're only allowed to do 30. I guess I'm talking myself into what you said, which is 30.
Right.
Okay, 30 it is, that's what we'll put
Want to make
into
it
the
30, want to make it a 33%? I mean, it doesn't matter, we splitting hairs? We're splitting hairs.
They all know how to
30%.
35.
I mean, I would said 35, but because if it's,
Plus pi.
Pi R squared?
Okay,
We wanted to get these things built in town, that's the goal, that's why we're doing all this stuff.
yes.
And we might need to tweak it. We might
Right.
need to evaluate.
But if you start seeing
But-
plans and they all end up being 32% or 35%, then you're gonna come back to us and
So
say,
right at 30.
Right.
Hey, I've carved it out, it's exactly 30, or, and
okay.
Okay.
So we got past, now we're down to line 56. We already talked about 57 to 60,
Yep,
has
which
to
is setback.
supply with the principal building lines.
Yep.
On-site parking, we talked about that already.
Right, and that's gonna be the big limiter. That's gonna be the problem for the people in this neighborhood, for example, around here, that they're just not gonna be able to have enough parking spaces that comply with the front yard and side yard setback requirement. But somebody who has an acre of land, who has even more strict setback requirements, they have much more area to play with, and they'll be able to do that. So the on-site parking requirement is going to be the big limiter. And
Okay,
that's, I
so-
think, why it'd be important on the application form to have illustrations to show people, here's what you're not allowed to do.
Yep.
Okay. So in that neighborhood that's around here, that's the 1/5 zone, if somebody can squeeze in a 450 square foot accessory dwelling, how many parking spaces do they need?
one.
One. So you just have to be able to figure how the one separate car can get in and out, and it's not gonna be tandem.
And Dave, would you insist, I think part of the regs would say it has to be paved.
I think the current regulations say it has to be hard surfaced, and we've accepted in the past compacted gravel with
Yeah.
stone as
Yeah.
opposed to paved.
Yeah.
But if this is gonna be more than just a single-family house, it's gonna be
You don't want
paying
tri-
tenants
Yeah.
there, we can certainly say it has to be paved.
I would go with the compacted stone, because it's a little bit easier, and it's
Yeah.
pervious.
Yeah, because people are gonna rip up their yard.
Yeah,
right?
you don't want people parking on grass and having two ruts in their front
Oh, yeah.
lawn as a parking space.
So Jeremy, that's one additional parking space for the ADU.
Correct.
Now, what if we get into multi-bedroom ADUs?
That's certainly one question that Dave and I did discuss, is one envisions, oh, it's a one-bedroom ADU,
Correct.
one parking space. As it goes up to 2, maybe 3, there's a potential for a 3. Do we say, okay, now you need
Is it one
one
space
and a
per
half or
bedroom?
more? Or do you just want to say flat out 1 for the ADU? Or is that going down the road of, hey, now we got people juggling cars all the time?
You want to say one
But
per
our-
bedroom?
But our
I think one
current
per
parking
bedroom.
regulations that
I
we
like that.
approved, what is it for a 2-bedroom?
It's like 1.5.
1.5, it is.
Right.
How do you, I mean, for an apartment building, it's different. You can
Yeah.
have a
Yeah,
half.
You can have half.
For my house, I do have a
Yeah.
half
Right,
parking.
it's,
Yes.
right now, it's for multifamily,
Yeah.
2 spaces for each 2-bedroom unit, and for a single-family house, it's 2.
Yep.
For a duplex, it's 2 per each unit. So if you have a duplex in town, and there are a handful, you need 4 parking spaces.
All right, so again, one per
Like-
bedroom. Make it simple.
1 per bedroom. Okay.
I mean, realistically, the second bedroom is gonna be like a divorced person with a kid. It's not gonna be 2 single people renting an ADU with 2 cars. I don't know if we need.
What if the kid's 16 or 17?
Well, that happens
Living in an
now.
ADU, they don't-
That happens in a primary residence.
Yeah.
You have 3 teenage drivers. You don't have.
2 adults, you don't have 5 parking
garage
spots.
spaces. You know, you're
I got 4
docking
cars
cars, you're docking cars around your own driveway with your own family, which, you know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parking spaces,
In your house.
1 for each car.
All right, what do you think?
I think, let's see, 1.5 wouldn't work. I think 1 for a 2-bedroom is reasonable, because I agree with Adam that it's highly likely the 2nd bedroom will not be occupied by a driver.
So you want 1 for a 2-bedroom?
Yeah,
So you're not 1 per bedroom?
oh,
Okay.
sorry, right,
So he's 1 per,
I'm 1 per bedroom, you're 1 per unit.
right.
you're 1 per
The
unit.
up to 2-bedroom. If it's a 3-bedroom.
Yeah.
More than 1 per unit. I mean, if you have 1 or 2 bed, even if you have a 1-bedroom, right, and you've got 2 adults in there, they both drive, I mean.
That's where the theory doesn't match, because he thinks you're supposed to be inexpensive if you're gonna quote unquote rent them. You know, to a young couple living together and have 2 cars, and they're living in a 500 square foot ADU, but, you know, you're spending more on car payments
Go
than
to
you're on
Manhattan
rent.
Beach, you'll see it all the time.
What's that?
Go to California, you see it all the time.
Yeah. You know, you're right. I mean, we have to get outside of our Darien box.
Yep.
And look at the other parts of the world. What do you say?
I'm undecided,
Undecided.
because I could see the parking being the biggest problem.
Then let's-
The biggest complaint for, you know, people that have an accessory dwelling unit, and I could just see, you know, that this being the #1 issue for for neighbors and accepting it.
Well, okay, we'll leave it open for now, because we're gonna have a public hearing on this anyway, and see what the public
Yep.
hearing says.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, okay.
All right, the next one is a big one. I'm on line 68, going to 74. I don't think we can deed restrict these things. I know I read what you wrote 3 times. I don't think you got a shot. You know, it is what it is, because no one's gonna deed restrict their ADU. You're not gonna see them.
Well, if you deed restricted it, wouldn't you be able to sell it separately? And there's another provision in here that says you can't sell it separately, right?
If you deed restrict it, then,
And you got a separate deed for this.
no, it's a restriction on the deed. So when you sell your house and you got a pool house and it's worth $3 million and you have a deed restricted ADU in it,
A part of the property is deed restricted and.
Correct.
Does that make any sense to you?
yeah, I mean, you can deed restrict your house to be pink
Yeah,
for the rest of your life.
it's like
When
a
you sell it,
conservation easement. You know, if you go to a historical house and they put on restrictions, you can't take out this portico because George Washington walked through it.
yep.
Okay.
I actually
Okay.
did that up in a house in New Canaan, like down to the type of wood that was used in the
Yeah.
living room.
You can't use that fake plastic stuff.
No, you had to use specific redwood that's not even available anymore, so.
It costs $100 a linear foot.
Interesting.
So, I mean, I don't think you got a shot at deed restricting these things.
Yeah, it does, and when Dave and I spoke about this as well, we talked about if it's a market rate unit, it's whatever the market will bear, and you can rent it under normal circumstance. The deed restriction makes it very difficult because you have to advertise, you have to income certify, there's a lot of paperwork that would need to be done, and for it to count as points becomes a lot of certification by staff, and I think that would dissuade a lot of people from
mean,
proceeding. While it'd be ideal, I think sadly, from a practical standpoint, very difficult to enforce.
I mean, we're not chasing moratorium reports for this, we're chasing, let's treat affordable housing for our town, and diversified housing in our town. You know, if somebody altruistically wants to rent it out to their, you know, somebody that has makes less than $40,000, God bless them.
Aren't they allowed to deed restrict it on their own if they want to?
They can,
Yeah.
but this says you have to do it.
You have to, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
see who's gonna build them.
I don't think very many people are going to have the attitude of, my neighbor's doing the same thing, and he's getting $4,000 a month rent, and I'm gonna deed restrict mine, and I'm gonna limit myself to $890 in rent.
For what? What does the property owner get?
I mean, there'll be some people that want to have this accessory dwelling unit for a family member or for an employee, a caretaker, a healthcare provider, or
Yep.
whatever. There'll be some that want to have it,
But they're gonna give it to them for free.
Maybe.
yeah.
You're gonna put your au pair in there for nothing.
Well, sometimes they work out actual rent, but and there'll be some people, very few people, that want to have the accessory dwelling unit as a socially conscious decision that they make to help solve the problem of not enough affordable housing.
That's
So it's kind of the opposite of NIMBY, of not in my backyard or my
Right.
neighbor's backyard.
Yep.
And the term that I read this weekend in a housing article was YIMBY, YIMBA. Yes, in my backyard. It's like, okay, but there will be very, very few people that do that in Darien.
What about an incentive? What about an incentive piece? If you're gonna deed restrict it, we'll allow you 1,500 square feet.
The part of the issue with this thing is if you're gonna do it from a rental perspective, to put in a kitchen or a bathroom is gonna cost you somewhere around $75,000,
Right.
right? So if you do the math, your payback on these things, if you're only getting $500 a month in rent, is like 10 years.
No, but if someone wants.
You're not doing it for income purposes.
But if someone's altruistic and they
Right.
say, you know what, I want to build a 2,000 square foot ADU,
Yep.
but I'll deed restrict it. Why not? Why wouldn't we encourage that?
Yeah,
It adds to the affordable. They have to deal with the headache of the compliance. I mean, you have to deal with part of it, but the landlord has to deal with, they have to be altruistic.
Good point. Would we put that inside this, or is that a whole separate other section?
Well, one option would be, of course, is you could do that. One option would be do that by special permit. Another option would be to say to someone who wants to do something like that, you know what? You're gonna have to do it as an 830G application. You'll have to come in, show the commission
Great.
how it, and that would be one way to do it. You come in, you have a hearing, it's, call it an 830G.
That'd be great, because you get set aside points
That's
for that.
actually, yeah, that's a.
You get more
that's-
moratorium
what-
points.
That's a real smart way to handle it. Yeah.
That's where you get paid.
You're still
for
having the
bills.
hearing, and they could come in and say, here's how we're gonna deal with all the issues, parking, septic, traffic, whatever, and you could build a bigger than X ADU, whether it's attached or detached, and
That's a great idea. Do
That
we
would-
need to
that
put
would
that
be
in
a-
here?
no, I think that would be an option that we would, Fred and I talk to people all the time about various ideas and concepts they have, so certainly that would be something that would come to mind for us. Hey, you want to do something like that, a little unusual? Here's one path.
That's a great idea.
Because we've approved 2 or 3 830G applications in our town, flat out approved.
That's correct.
Okay.
And there's no space for incentives other than 830G, just to say, here's our ADU regulations. We're not requiring you to have them to be deeded affordable. However, if you were to deed it affordable, you get a concession on your taxes.
That's a whole different- yeah.
We can't conflate and
Yeah, that would
open
be
up
a
that
separate
Pandora's box. Okay.
question. I know certainly that will be, one of the issues is when we do issue a permit for an accessory
Yep.
dwelling unit, hey, you can now add the kitchen, those permits travel from our department to the building department.
Yep.
Then the assessor comes upstairs once a month. In the old days, they grab a pile of paper, but now they do it electronically, and the assessor says, okay, give me a list of all the permits that have come through, and, oh, I see so-and-so got an accessory dwelling unit. And the assessor
that's-
will go visit the property and
Okay.
But if
mark up
they're
accordingly.
using 830G, do they have to care about the setback?
No, they would not.
No.
They can put as
They're
many
just gonna override the
parking
whole
spots
draft we're just
and-
putting together. Yeah, which is.
But it's got to be affordable.
Which is, but
Right,
but
because
that's.
30% have to be
But that's a
affordable.
That
path
flies
that's
in-
available to them today.
True.
Right,
That's
That's a
true.
path that's totally available
That's
to them
true.
today.
yeah.
But that,
I'm not sure you
that's,
want to advertise it.
Yeah,
It's-
I tend to think most people will, and again, we've kicked around this idea. What are we likely to see, depending on how this shakes out? Will we see pool houses being converted? Will we see outbuildings, detached garages being converted? upper areas above existing garages. And I think that we're kind of interested to see how it all turns out
Yeah.
on what is the most common design, if you will.
Because I think we got to crawl before we walk.
Sent those in later.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I make a point of order?
Of course you can.
Can we let Dave sit in a chair?
It's okay. I'll leave
Sure?
it, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
He can if he wants to.
Yes, I could.
Okay.
Just worry about you with the cane.
All right, so now I think we're on 76 to 84. We did that already?
Yep.
That's already done? Actually, we're on 82 to 85. Provision in the draft amendments include making sure that ADUs are for renter only, they are not to be sold as separate units, and they are not for short-term rentals, less than 90 days. I wrote good. My only thing was that if you have an ADU and you want to rent it out for June, July, and August for the summer, that's 91 days. Or Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Do you want to create more dwelling units in town for that, for vacation rentals?
Not really.
Then if somebody lives there for the summer, that's one thing, rather than saying it has to be at least a 6-month occupancy or something like that. But, yeah, if somebody said May, June, July, or June, July, August, or whatever,
So he's
it's
making it
going to
90
push the
days.
limit, but that's not the intent.
You all right with that?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with
Okay.
Yeah.
You okay? I mean, you're okay, right?
Yeah.
You're okay? You're okay? All right. You got that one, Dave, 82 to 85. Now we're at last page.
And we're just saying rental only, you're not gonna be able to sever this from your, come back before us and say, well, I wanna sell the ADU to somebody else.
No,
or-
yeah, no.
It's part of it. That, I
No.
think we need to make sure.
I think that comes up, yeah, that was on, yeah, he's
That's
got
for
that on
rental
line
only.
83.
Yeah, exactly. That's the important part in that.
Because to me, that's also your mother, your grandmother comes up from Florida for the summer. Go stick her in the pool house. Sorry, Mom. But I don't want her living in the same house as me, bumping her in the bathroom, but she can live in the pool house. Right? That's what I did.
How much further do you want to go with that?
Old man.
It's all true, man. It's all true.
It's clearly getting late.
Yeah, it is. We got Patrick McMahon hanging out. He's laughing at us too. All right, next page. Provision also approves to prohibit rumors and borders in addition to ADUs on the same property. So that means an ADU can rent out to a guy that's going to live there overnight? Is that what that is?
Well, that's, I think, what you want to prohibit.
Yeah, no.
Is that if both the principal dwelling and the accessory dwelling unit, nobody could have rumors or borders once you have an ADU on the site.
Okay.
Because then the parking problem becomes even worse.
Right.
If somebody does not have an accessory dwelling unit, and today, under the current regulations, they can have up to 3 rumors or borders. And we have less than a dozen of those that I know of in town.
Okay.
But I can just envision when they have an apartment as well, and then it's, well, is it 3 rumors or borders per property or per dwelling unit?
Right.
And as a zoning enforcement officer, people would come in and argue with me all the time and tell me what the regulations mean instead of me telling them what they are.
He wrote this one.
And so then they would say, well, okay, it could be 3 per property, then the principal gets 2 borders and the ADU gets 1 border? No, just not at all.
Okay.
One thing I don't think we contemplated here is the type of construction. Are we requiring these to be permanent structures? Because I don't think we've seen anything that says, why can't I put in a portable and it meets all these requirements, and I put the portable in the middle of my backyard and I hook it up to electric and everything else. But we don't have in here type of construction.
The zoning regulations currently say if it's a recreational vehicle, and then it broadly defines recreational vehicles to include boats and trailers and
Yep.
mobile homes and
Yep.
motor homes
Yep.
and trailer homes. And it says they can be stored
Yep.
on the residential property, but they cannot be lived in.
Okay.
If somebody wants to have a prefabricated dwelling unit of some sort,
But you can buy
and
online
put
right
it on
now.
the property, they need to meet the building code. Needs to
Okay.
have a proper foundation,
That
needs to
just
have
goes
proper
under the
utility
building code
hookups.
regulations.
So it'll be,
We don't need to double belt and suspenders it here.
yeah, it could be portable in the sense that, yes, you could move it at some point in the future by putting a chassis and wheels underneath it and pulling the whole thing out. But in practical terms, it's not really portable.
Got it.
It's not really temporary.
Right, let's move it, there's two points. One is, you can look it up online, you can buy a granny pod online for $250,000. We went through this with granny pods 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and we opted out of it.
Yes.
And in that regulation, it said, once your grandmother passes away or moves out, you're supposed to take the thing off property and throw it in the garbage. That's what the regulation said. We ended up opting out of it, we didn't do it. If you move it to today, to back up your point, what's the fancy place where you get the sheds? Walcott or something like that?
Walpole.
Walpole. So I can go buy a Walpole shed that's 20 by 20 and stick it on my backyard and a foundation, and you can live in that, I can rent that thing out?
I read articles like this all the time online, and it's just funny to me because somebody says, I bought my Home Depot shed for $450 and turned it into an ADU. Or I got a great deal and I did this for my mini dwelling. It's like, well, if it's gonna comply with the building code, it starts with the foundation, and then it goes to the structural walls. And 2x2 walls do not comply with the building code for residences, for dwelling units.
Okay,
And then the energy code, which is part of the building code, says has to be properly insulated, and all the windows have to be rated so that you're not gonna be losing heat, because that uses energy. And then if you do put in the ceiling insulation, the ceiling using 2x4s doesn't comply with the building code for somebody to inhabit it. So when I read these articles online about people that bought these sheds and converted them, nobody ever says it cost me $80,000 to comply with all the codes and requirements.
Okay.
So your theory is correct, but in practice, it doesn't work out. It's like people saying, I'll take my detached garage and make it into an ADU. The detached garage foundation doesn't meet the building code for a foundation for a dwelling. It meets the building code for a garage, but not for a dwelling.
Okay.
And then the same thing goes with the walls and insulation and everything else.
And to that point, just to further, those windows inside my Walpole shed that I just paid $2,000 for, they have to be fireman windows, and those windows in there are little plastic.
Yep, the bedrooms have to have adequate egress. And
So that all gets flushed out when it's, because we're not gonna see half of these, that all gets flushed out in the building permit section.
Got it.
That's correct.
Okay.
But also, Amy's question reminds me, ARB gets to weigh in too, doesn't it?
Not on residential,
On it.
or not commercial.
I guess we'd have to distinguish that, because normally it's multifamily, goes to ARB. So George is right, there
Yes.
might need to be a provision to say, does not need to go to ARB, if that's the way the commission wants it.
Yeah.
If we're not looking at it, ARB should look at it.
Yeah.
Okay?
The fire code and the building code define multifamily as 3 or more in the same building, I believe it is. So allowing one ADU in addition to a principal dwelling unit is not multifamily in the code requirement.
Yeah.
For English department, yes, it's multi, meaning it's more than one. But for code purposes, 3 or more in one building is.
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac's the same thing, to be a conforming loan, it's 1 and 2 family, and then 3 and 4 families, it's a little different
Yep.
thing. Okay. We're up to, what just said, your last sub, we already talked about, line 88 to 89. A note included in the draft room, existing structures that are too close to the property line to make said or not to be converted to ADU use. So we already did that. Okay, the last thing, I don't know, I couldn't figure out what you were saying in lines of 91 to 94 about something about senior citizens and.
Some regulations say that these accessory dwelling units have to be, either the principal unit or the accessory unit have to be owner occupied. That the owner of the property has to live there. Other regulations say that either the principal dwelling or the accessory dwelling have to be occupied by a senior citizen. The intent was to create senior housing.
Okay.
The commission did not indicate that that was a desire in the previous discussion, but I just wanted to kind of make sure, if that's what you want, we can add that type of thing to the regulations.
I don't think these are designated for senior housing. Because, I mean, the story I said is college kids come back and you stick them in the pool house. And then in the other example is when people do get an ADU, a lot of times in certain markets like Westport, the principal owner lives in the ADU and they rent out the house.
Right.
Because one's $1,000 a month, one's $5,000 a month.
And others will be both rented. That's,
But we don't want that.
you don't want that.
We don't want the house.
He's saying it's hard to enforce. So why even bother?
I would say that the house has got to be owner occupied, or one of the two has to be owner occupied.
You don't have to owner occupy your house now. You don't have an ADU.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it ends up being a two-family rental.
It's gonna be a rental anyway.
All right, what's the thought on that?
I like it. I like your,
You like one's got to be owner occupied. George?
I'm not sure why I would care about that.
character and nature of the town.
No, we're not changing the building itself, just who
No,
uses it.
but if you're living in there with someone else, you're gonna make sure it's maintained and taken care of. If there's two renters in there, I mean, ask Amy about rental property values. Once you rent your property, what happens to the value of the property?
Or the neighborhood.
Well, you know, but I also, I'd have to think that through because, you know, people, life happens to people, they get transferred and they, you know, buy a house and something causes, they have two houses and they say, you know, I don't want to let go of that house, but I want to rent it out. I don't want to, you know, sell it just yet. It's a down market. They don't want to sell it. They want to, you know, opt to rent something instead of selling. I don't know that I'd want to handcuff somebody to say that they couldn't rent out their dwelling unit and their main house at the same time.
Okay.
They own it.
Jeff?
I agree with Adam.
Adam was, you can rent them both.
Rent them both.
Yeah.
They own it. It's their house.
Yeah.
So
Why
you're
can't I
both can
come
rent,
in?
you're owner occupied,
I'd let them both be rented.
you both rent, I'm owner occupied, you're both
Okay, let
rented.
Let me take another stab at it
Go ahead.
then. Instead of owner occupied, what about you can only rent one of the units, which is what you can do now? I can go rent my house now, but I can't make it into a party bus with two renters on, the same piece of property.
Because that's your instance, for argument's sake, I've got a house that's got an ADU. I just got transferred to Texas, right? So either you're leaving the house empty or you're selling the house with the renter in place that's got a year lease. Maybe the lease says that it's cancelable upon sale. Who knows? Probably not. All right, let's keep it open. We're getting
Yeah,
late,
I'd like
and we
to
still
think a
gotta see
little more about
Patrick
that.
I'll
too.
draft up a provision
I'd
like
like to
that,
think a little more about
and
it.
I'll look at other regulations, and it's easier for you to strike it out next time than to try to redraft it now.
I don't want,
But definitely not a senior requirement,
Yeah.
but the owner requirement.
I don't want two family renters. That's
No,
my
right.
opinion.
Then you're
Okay.
creating multifamily.
Correct.
I get three as proper multifamily, but, and especially if you're splitting houses,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You're gonna have, I don't know.
I run into it all the time, and you can go all around the boroughs of Manhattan, it happens all the time, but. All right, as Chris wants to proceed with the actions, next step to the public hearing, all that stuff. Okay. Let's go over the blue sheet really quick. Accessory dwelling, we talked about that. The transient issue, we talked about that. Add section 403N, one dwelling unit on a property of 1 acre or more in compliance with the provisions. And then the second one is one accessory unit on less than 1 acre in compliance with that, okay? And that, just so everyone's on the same page,
Change that to less. than-
that half is gonna be, those two halves get changed to one.
Yep, yep.
So everyone's on the same page, we're gonna see it as a general meeting item, and it's not a public hearing, and it's not a special permit,
Correct.
okay?
And the special permit that the commission issues, you have to make certain findings, which include a finding that the use, the special permit use, whatever it is, will have no adverse impacts on the character and values of the neighboring properties.
You can't put that.
And I think that's what you want to avoid, having to make that finding, because that's what people will appeal.
Right,
Yeah.
So that's why it would be site plan approval, which is ministerial. You meet all the rules, you answer the questions to the commission, you get it approved.
Yep,
Just like Tucker tonight.
yep.
Okay. The next one, 407C, where minimum gross floor, there's no minimum, right? The maximum gross floor, we're going to change that to from 1,000 feet to 1,200 square feet,
Yep.
right? And then put in the extra governor in there of, and no more than 30% of the principal size, structure size. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Page 2, 3 is fine, 4 is fine. I think 5 we talked about, that's parking spaces. 6 is going to get stricken. Right, that shall be de-recyclable income, D32, all that stuff.
Correct.
7, we talked about that. It can be short-term rental, vacation stays, occupied, so it can be 91 plus days. 8, to avoid overcrowding. Site property, we talked about that. 9's fine. 10 is fine. Yeah, 10's what we were talking about. That detached structure which are for storage, similar park, do not comply with the setback requirements, cannot be converted to finished habitable living spaces. And then just talk to me about 11 again. I mean, I liked it as nice, but what I'm, like, again, if we pass this thing July 1st, I would like to say, you know, on July 2nd, all these things get legalized. If someone comes in to have a question.
I had to just pick a date.
Right, but that's why if there's existing, like I said, the part about it is the kitchen thing. If you're looking at houses that are online that are listed by realtors, it says there's 2 bedrooms in a separate structure, right? Where my kids could live, but doesn't have a kitchen. Those are the things I'd like to be counted as ADUs.
So we're grandfathering everything
Well, they would have to
currently in
put it-
town in, is what you're saying?
They would have to put a kitchen in.
So it's not an ADU if it doesn't have a kitchen.
That's correct. I think that's the way Dave described it here.
In the definition.
Has an indoor cooking facility, including but not limited to stove, oven, range, cooktop. Now, one thing we talked about is microwave oven,
Right.
which, you know, microwave oven, you go to Best Buy and get one for $50 and off
Right.
you go.
Right. Okay. So because what I want to make sure is those bedrooms that are inside pool houses that exist today have fireman windows.
If they want to be counted, right?
Even if they don't, if we find out about it, we still want them to have a fireman window.
They
how
generally
do you
do.
do that?
If they were approved as bedrooms.
They weren't approved as bedrooms. They were approved as storage. And as soon as the building inspector left,
Okay.
they put a bed in the room that was
Okay.
marked as
There's some of
storage.
those,
And
I'm
then when they
sure.
come back on the market, they're marketed as clean storage.
Right? But there's no kitchen inside that extra building. So those are not going to be included in as ADUs.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
And if they want them to become ADUs, they have to make all the code things necessary.
Yeah, but nobody would, no one really cares. It doesn't do anything for the owner. All it does, if they file a building permit, then their taxes are gonna go up. Well, they're not gonna do that.
That's why we have laws, so that people follow them, and they don't just create bedrooms in their house.
They do it when they go to sell it.
Oh,
They what?
They do it when they go to sell it.
It makes them come legal when they go to sell
When
it?
they want to sell it, and they want to capitalize on that asset, and not being able to say it's an ADU, then they got to
Yeah,
make
the
it
biggest
compliant.
incentive in
And then the
town,
taxes.
the way things get done is the week of your closing.
Yeah, and then the taxes get nailed to the next guy.
Well, no, because, right, the sale
Yeah.
Yes.
really
Triggers
dictates.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%, right?
Yeah.
The assessment goes up after the sale based upon what the
What they pay.
assessor found. Okay. I mean, it does go up
No,
what they
not the
pay.
assessor, the purchaser.
Yeah. Okay, note ADUs defined as source per, and that's the beginning. Okay. Any more questions? I think you did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, then.
Right?
Yeah, I'm good.
So,
So we'll aim to have Dave come back probably first or second week in May, if the schedule allows, and kind of hash through this. So between now and then, kick it around your heads, drive around town. Dave's going to put version 2 together, and we'll see you in about 3-4 weeks.
and then can we get this on the RTM docket before July?
RTM.
What do we need?
Public hearing.
I I guess it depends how the second version looks. If you like it in early May, we can put it on for a July hearing. That's entirely possible.
Okay, I'd like to do it before the summer
Okay,
recess.
we'll see what we do.
That'd be great. Okay, thank you, Dave. Next item back on the agenda, Patrick, I'm really sorry. Update on going back to the agenda, update on Darien Commons project from Patrick McMahon of Federal Realty. Update on the residential retail leasing as well as Equinox roof screening update. Sorry to make you wait, but this is
Not at
important.
all, I was done at ARB, so I think I was probably
And
earlier.
you've got to go back to ARB.
Yes.
Oh, really? Tonight?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus. Patrick McMahon, welcome. I don't know if everybody met him before. He is the lead developer from Federal Realty, building Darien Commons. I've not been to any of your, oh, actually, I did get a free salad from Sweet Greens.
On the friends and family, or the opening day.
I think my family got 6 of them, for the record. All 3 kids.
6 of the 800.
Yes. Welcome. You're here to give us a presentation, an update. We really appreciate this. I know you live in Boston Metro, and you're here for us.
I appreciate the opportunity, and actually, there's a number of new faces, at least from my side. I don't think I've been here in quite a while, which is a good thing. Although, wanted to provide an update tonight and also talk a little bit about maybe some plans for some of the additional real estate that we have. So, Patrick McMahon with Federal Realty Investment Trust. Appreciate the time tonight. I know you have gone through quite a bit, and so hopefully I'm not going to keep you for too much longer. Wanted to give you an update on where we are, both on the residential as well as the retail at the Darien Commons project. I think I said Federal Realty, but I did not finish that sentence. Federal Realty Investment Trust, the proponent of the Darien Commons redevelopment project. And also talk a little bit about a couple of ideas that we have for additional, I wouldn't call it development, but additional work there that we intend to bring to both Jeremy and Fred, and potentially to you and certainly to the ARB. So the first would be just a quick update on the residential. We have 2 new residential buildings there, 122 units in total. The first residential building, which runs parallel to west, is the R1 building that's got 58 units. We opened that in October of this past year. We're fully leased in that building. So we have 58 units. We've got 58 leases in the R1 building. We opened the R3 building. That's the L-shaped building that comes out and meets the site entry off of Heights. You've probably driven past there a number of times over the past couple of years and noticed the stone wall that's gone up, what is now storefront on the first floor for the retailer that's going in. That's the R3 building. There's 64 units there. We opened that last month, March. We have 21 leases of 64 units. So fully leased in the first building, 21 leased, call it almost a third in the second building.
Can I stop you 1 second?
Sure.
Just for the record, there's 16 units total that are affordable?
Correct.
In the complex?
Correct.
Of the 58 in the first building, there's 8 of those are affordable, so there's 50 market rates and 8 affordable units in the first building?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right.
And then in the second building, you have 64 units. There's another 8 units inside that.
Correct.
Are those, of the 21 that are leased, are those 8 within the 21?
We don't include those, so I'm giving you the market rate unit count that's leased. However, and I can see Jeremy nodding, those are leased. So,
I knew they were.
or they're either leased or they're working through the income qualification process, meaning we've already gone through the lottery, designated the affordable unit to a resident, and they're just simply going through the paperwork process at this point.
So to close the loop, all 16 affordable units in your whole campus are present and accounted for?
Accounted for, correct. That's an accurate statement.
8 of them are definitely being lived in, and the other 8 may or not be lived in at this point.
Right.
But they have tenants ready to move in as soon as they get approved.
Also right.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that clarification. That's an important one. So we're, as I said, almost a third leased on the second building. If we continue at this pace, we anticipate being somewhere in the fully stabilized, meaning fully stabilized for the project, to the property for the second building, early summer of this year. I know school-age children are a I don't want to call it a hot topic, but one that's important to the town, as it should be, to any municipality. We can't give very specific details. FHA, federal housing regulations preclude us from doing that, but I can speak sort of generally about it. And then certainly very happy to share that information with the school committee and even the school department and superintendent. Right now, we've got, I would say, less than 6 school-age children that are new to Darien schools. And we've got another 6 that are school-age children but have moved into the property. Were already moved into the property from another location in Darien. We're already enrolled in Darien schools. So we have, it's actually, I said less than 6, it's 5. We have 5 new children out of the 79 units that we have leased. We've got 5 new school-age children for Darien schools. So again, that's information that I'm actually providing, I think, for the first time to anybody in the town tonight. I will reach out to the chairman of the school board as well as chairperson of the school board as well as the school department.
When you say school-age kids, because I think one of my son's cohort friends, they moved from a house and they moved into the complex, and that's a teenage kid. When you say school age, does that mean middle school? Does that mean high school? Does that mean
it means all? It actually. Thank you for asking that. That's an important clarification. It actually means a child that could be in kindergarten all the way up to a child that could be a senior in high school.
Okay.
So that's what we count as school age children. We've got a couple of babies, and so more broadly to speak to the demographics there. While I just hit the school age children, that's actually not. Sort of families with kids that are in schools is not the dominant demographic. Our dominant demographics are sort of exactly what we thought going in, and it's good to say, knock on wood, it's certainly what we've seen coming out of the leasing process, and that is young couples sort of either thinking about family formation or in the early stages of family formation, meaning pregnant or one on the way, wanting to live in the town, and determining that they'll rent for a year or 2 while they go find a house. We have a significant number of folks there. The other 2 would be empty nesters and retirees. So the majority of our units are leased to residents that fall into one of those 3 categories, which is what we anticipated and certainly what we designed for, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So that's, I would say, the residential update at this point. And happy if there are members of the commission that would like a tour, very happy to do that.
I've toured it 3 times.
All right, could I just, of those tenants, do you see an influx from out of Darien, or are they Darienites moving within Darien, or both?
So both. We've got a lot of folks, call them Darienites, that are here in the town that are moving. A lot, that whole empty nester retiree, I mean, I don't want to say 100% because I'm sure I'll be wrong, but most of them are coming from somewhere else in Darien or simply downsizing or a life circumstances move them there. We also, on the front end, sort of that, I call it, it's not even late 20s, but early 30s, those couples that are, again, thinking about buying a home and therefore biding their time and not being rushed into a home sale process by renting for a year or 2. A lot of those folks are actually children that grew up in the town and are looking to come back. Or we got a couple that grew up in other area towns, Stamford, New Canaan, but a lot of them grew up in Darien and are actually, went to work either in the city or somewhere else and are now coming back because they want to be close to mom and dad.
So that's the story I heard was it's a husband and wife, they met in Manhattan, they lived in the city, and then the wife said, we're moving back to my hometown. And the husband from Ohio contemplated and said, yes, sure.
Based on the Tokenique school, it's usually the husband who wants to move back here.
Oh, really? Wow.
I know 5 families under 3rd grade, all husbands were lifers that have moved back.
Wow.
No wives. Wives from everywhere. The husbands all from Darien.
As someone who grew up in Colorado, I now have lived in Boston for 25 years. I live 2 miles from where my wife grew up. I'm now more from Massachusetts than I am from Colorado.
I grew up on Long Island, lived a half a mile from my mother-in-law and a half a mile from my brother-in-law. I had no choice.
Now you're here. Happy to answer additional questions on the residential and certainly happy to tour folks.
Good? Okay.
On the retail side of things, there have been some changes there and certainly some updates. And indeed, to be sure, I'd like to come back to you maybe in the subsequent meeting. We need to present to you the actual tenant roster and the use category into which those tenants fit against the special permit and what we designated in the special permit from a use category perspective, in particular food and beverage and bar seating, so that we need to demonstrate to you and you need to approve those tenants so that we're not upsetting any of those square footage counts. A lot of that has to do with parking, particularly from bar seating and that sort of thing. So I'm not here to do that tonight, but indeed that is my intention to come next meeting. My hope was to do that tonight. We actually postponed from the last meeting. I thought we were right there with 2 leases. We just got one signed. The other one is still on the goal line. It is a restaurant tenant, so I thought we'd save that. However, I'll give a quick update on where we are. We've got 5 retail tenants, 122 new residential units, 75,000 square feet of new retail space. So we don't, on our retail space or commercial space, there's an additional 50,000 square feet. Equinox has got about 30 of that. Citibank has got 5 of that. There's some offices above Citibank. So there's 50,000 square feet of commercial that I don't sort of get into or talk about relative to the new retail space.
Is Walgreens in the 50?
No, so Walgreens is in the 75.
Okay.
So they're 12, kind of speaking round numbers, they're 12 of the 75. So now you're at 63,000 square feet of new retail space in the ground floor of one of the 2 residential buildings.
Okay.
Of that 63,000, we've got 5 stores that are currently open. Choice Pet, it's a pet goods, pet store, as you might think. Solid Core, it's an athletic training concept. Sweet Green, as the salad bowl concept there on the corner, that has done extremely well out of the gate, and we're really encouraged by their sales figures and hope that that sustains. Warby Parker opened this past about a week actually ago. Warby Parker these are Warby Parker glasses. They're eyewear. They're right next to Sweet Green. Of Me has also been open. Of Me is facials, Botox, treatments, that sort of thing. So those are the 5 tenants that are open. We expect to open this month. Actually, they have projected or are hoping to open on April 27th, they being Van Leeuwen. It's an ice cream. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads, so I'm sure a lot of folks here know who Van Leeuwen is. We're
No, their sign's up. It looks great.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
signs in there. They're just not making ice cream yet.
Yeah. They will be very soon, and we will.
Is that the day you're coming back to present?
Yes, with quarts and quarts of ice cream. So they should be opening here, hopefully by April 27th, certainly this month. In May, Naya, which is a Mediterranean concept, fast casual restaurant concept coming out of New York City, they'll be opening in May. This summer, we expect to open a number of tenants. One medical, it's a medical office. Think sort of conventional medical offices. Seymour's is a seafood concept restaurant coming out of, again, Manhattan. They're right on the end of Heights. We're extremely excited to get those folks open. I think they're going to do a very cool sort of indoor-outdoor connection, great outdoor seating.
Did they approve tonight down at ARB?
They did, yeah. So we had an art sculptural element that we'll be adding to their facade. It's evocative of a school of fish, sort of wrapping the corner by an artist out of New Haven that we've done a ton of work with. She's got work all over the country. She's got some national renown. So we're extremely excited about that. It's a very cool sculpture. Gregory's Coffee, which is the standalone sort of black 1,200 square foot building right also on Heights Road. We hope to get them open very soon, certainly this summer. You probably heard this or know this anecdotally. One of the few items that remains sort of caught up in supply chain, madness and craziness and extended schedules is kitchen equipment. So a lot of our restaurants, anything with fuses and controls and parts that come from all over the world, sort of are still ensconced in some sort of supply chain problem, and that manifests itself in delays. So
And Gregory's got through ARB?
Gregory's got through ARB, so they're good to go.
Okay.
Gregory's Coffee, Salt and Sweat, that is kind of think wraps and massages. They will open, wraps being body wraps, not actual sandwich wraps. They will open this summer. Hammer and Nails, that's a new tenant that will go on that list. Hammer and Nails is a men's barber. Very much sort of an old school men's barber that, you know, it's intended to be more than just going and get your hair cut quick and get in and get out. So a lounge sort of component to that. So it's a very cool concept. Hammer and Nails will open this summer. Pizzeria Molto out of Fairfield. Hopefully those guys will be open in the next couple of months, but certainly this summer. Sur La Table, that's a new tenant that we just recently announced. We probably put them in the bucket of being an anchor tenant. They're over 5,000 square feet, meaning the anchor. Outside of Walgreens and Equinox. Sur La Table, you probably know, is a kitchenware, cutlery. They will have a chef demonstration kitchen right up against the glass where they're going to be doing demonstration cooking and classes. So we're super excited to get them open. That's an amenity for everybody, for the neighborhood, for the people living upstairs, and it will be a big anchor and draw to the property. This fall, early fall, Chip City, a gourmet cookie company coming out of Manhattan. As you probably now have picked up, there's a narrative here. The Manhattan retail world is following the well-worn path of their consumer from the city in their younger years to, and I'm now pointing at the chairman, in their younger years to living here in Darien. So Chip City is going to be coming out. They'll go in between Seymour's and the Van Leeuwen Ice Cream and across the street from Gregory's Coffee, which will be sort of, it was very intentional that we have those concepts where they are. It's sort of why I'm pausing here and talking about it. That they all flank our public plaza, where we'll have outdoor seating, not just for the restaurants, but it's mostly large public plaza where we will have outdoor seating for the public. So wanted to activate that space with a cookie guy and an ice cream guy and a coffee shop.
When do you anticipate that outdoor seating to be done? When those tenants are all filled out?
Yes, when Seymour's and Gregory's. So hopefully Seymour's is moving. We hope to get them open by early June.
Okay.
We hope to get those guys open by early June. We want to open that up so that people can enjoy it once it really starts to get warm here permanently.
Did you order your tables and chairs yet? The other guy got snookered.
We did 8 months ago.
Okay,
So, and we got them a month ago.
there you go.
So, and I think standard lead times would have put them at 4 or 5 months. So, yeah, another crazy remnant of supply chain issues. We have a bagel concept that's a tenant that we haven't announced at all, either publicly or otherwise. A bagel concept with a new restaurant group. They're not yet named, and they wanted to go public themselves, but they were okay with us communicating tonight that we'll be they'll be filling the space next to Molto, in between Molto and Walgreens. Again, very intentional that we did something that is either a sit down plus a grab and go, activating what is a public plaza, smaller public plaza in front of the Walgreens area. If you've been there, you might know what I'm talking. You probably know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, we have a larger outdoor public seating area next to the Walgreens entrance. So very intentional with the tenant there. That leaves us. We've got about 10%, less than 10% of the space remaining to lease. Meaning less than 10% of the retail space remaining to lease. And we've got strong interest right now from women's fashion and apparel tenants. Probably we'll be announcing one of those in the next week or two, which will be exciting. We are now really focused on drawing in some more local and regional concepts now that we've got some good, solid national, international brands, Warby and Sweet Green. Those folks tend to generate interest from smaller regional brands because they can rely on the foot traffic that those create. We've had 2 tenants. This will go on next month. This will go on the list. We've had 2 tenants fall out of lease. You had previously approved Oath Pizza concept, actually out in Nantucket. It's a very fast, casual pizza concept. You're not going in there to sit down and eat. It's a sort of dine in, dine out, as well as Gloss Lab, which was a sort of nail salon. So both.
Kayla was going to be a member.
I'm sorry?
My daughter was going to be a member.
Oh.
Save you money.
I hate to disappoint. We say fallen out of lease. We have great relations with both those tenants. They've elected not to move forward, so, which is fine. One of those women fashion apparel companies that I just mentioned actually is likely going to take one of those spaces, so.
Is Malta a pizza place?
Malto it is more of dine-in. In fact, it is dine-in. I think they probably, because of COVID, do takeout now.
Great.
In fact, I'm sure they do takeout. I don't want to be wrong on that, have the owner be upset that I said they don't do it. I'm sure they do takeout, but they are a dine-in establishment, Italian food as well as pizza. So they have a wood-fired oven. It's not just pizza. It's actually a full Italian menu. And they also have a substantial bar. So Seymour's and Malto would be the two that have the most seating. And both of those were actually in, I believe, the previous approval. The Malto folks, in addition to having Malto and Fairfield, they do have an Italian concept in New Canaan, or he's a co-owner an Italian concept there. And I do this every single time I mention Spiga. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Spiga.
Yeah, it's a great spot. And they already applied for a liquor license, all that stuff is going to eventually.
They have.
Okay.
Yes. I know Seymour's has. I believe they have.
Do
I
they
believe they
supposed
have.
to sign out for the building? It says a liquor license been approved.
It's required by, I don't know if it's.
The liquor,
approved,
somebody.
but the liquor commission requires that. In town hall, it's a sign off, but they have to post the sign.
Yeah.
So that's the retail update. We intend to come back once we've got a couple more leases signed to again indicate that the uses we think, and it certainly will be our opinion, but we think fall within the correct buckets as per the special permit. We'll probably hopefully do that next month.
Okay. Are you going to give us like what I would call a standard rent roll without, the lease start date? Because we've always jockeyed around with this square footage thing to make sure it's right.
Yes.
Because you go off a commercial rent roll based upon the leases is really the best thing to do versus gross square footage and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly
It
what
makes it a
we'll do.
lot easier than me.
Yeah, Patrick, I envision Patrick, you've shown me a spreadsheet before where they kind of keep track of the square footage. And so it's constant flux. Spreadsheet changes every day.
It is, and that spreadsheet pulls off of our rent roll.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
that's exactly, yeah, for that reason.
I mean, that's where I come from, rent rolls.
Yes, yeah. So it's something that you have seen.
Okay.
And then in addition, I was going to talk about the rooftop mechanicals at Equinox, and then some additional plans. Whenever we sort of get to the end of a project, we'll be here. We're going to be here forever. We are forever holder. We're a retail REIT, so we don't build and flip or sell unless there's some unique or otherwise overwhelmingly compelling reason to do so. We will be in Darien for hopefully the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I say that because at the end of our project developments, we tend to sort of turn around, look back, and pick up on either where we've fallen down or where we've totally missed something and should go back and address it. And so that's sort of the preamble for a couple of items. One is, and this isn't us, this is I think for a number of folks on the P&Z, the rooftop mechanicals on the top of Equinox are very visible. They're not aesthetically pleasing. And I'm saying that to, laughing. It's they're very visible from both West and Norotan and clearly in need of screening. We do have a rooftop screen designed and ready to go. We went up there 2 weeks ago, and the roof we leased the entire building. It's sort of akin to a ground lease to Equinox, so they take care of the building. Though we own it, but they take care of the exterior as well as the interior. We had not been up there in a long time. The roof is in tough shape. So we're in the process right now of talking to Equinox about whether or not the roof gets replaced now, as it likely should be, because once we go install this screen and it's going to go all the way around with posts, we're going to be ripping up that rubber membrane. And that only invites problems if you've got an old, tired roof that's in need of replacement. So we're in the process of talking to Equinox. I expect that those conversations will conclude in the next 2 weeks, and I can communicate our schedule for erecting a screen to go all the way around. so that we're not, you guys aren't, you guys, the neighborhood, us, we're not having to drive around and see those ugly rusting.
And
roofed
did you
up
get,
vehicles.
it was tonight you going to ARB for approvals on what it's gonna look like?
No, so we need to do that as well.
Do they have to do that, right?
Yeah, I think Liz Geiger, the chairman from ARB, has been working directly with Patrick on that question, the best way to proceed. So it's likely he'll get on the ARB agenda for May, which is May 15th or 20th or whatever, because it'll take you 2 weeks to work it out with Equinox.
With Equinox,
come up
yep.
with the design, go to ARB.
Okay, cool, great.
Yep.
That's great. I
In fact,
appreciate
yeah,
you
we
doing
even
that.
have a design ready to go, hopefully, I mean, we haven't
Yep.
showed it to anybody yet, but.
Yeah, we got a lot of calls on that too. Thank you.
I'm sure, absolutely. In addition to that, there is some sculptural elements that we're going to look to add. And then there is 40 Heights, which is probably best known by everybody in the town as the Citibank building. Citibank and Edward Jones on the ground floor is 40 Heights. It's the red brick building, 2 stories. The second floor of that building is at this point sort of in functional obsolescence. We had leased it to Norwalk. And Norwalk Hospital they had small doctor's practices up there for years and years and years. They vacated, it became our construction offices, and not because it was the contractor in there, but it is effectively in functional obsolescence. And if we were to go try to lease that today, we could not to probably anybody other than someone looking for storage close to Darien Commons. So we are in the process right now of looking at a couple different design concepts. We have not shown anything to anybody yet. I actually just emailed Jeremy and Fred about it the other day, asking to come in to meet with them first. We're looking at a couple of different design concepts. We'd love to, if possible, expand some of the window sizing. There's some, if you look at the second floor there, you'll see what looks to be sort of old, tired, residential grade windows. Some of them don't even fully close. So the heating bill has been a lot of fun to pay. The roof is needing replacement. The trim is rotting. So there's some lipstick on the pig, to use a tired expression. Lipstick on the pig that's necessary, but as well, we want to look at really lifting that building up so that we can lease that second floor. So again, that's something we'll meet first with Jeremy and Fred on, and then hope to bring that to you and to the ARB quickly.
What is the zoning on that building? Is that different than?
Same.
It's the same
Yeah,
as the remaining
I think it's DC,
development?
designed commercial, or in the Roten Heights zone,
Over there.
which would allow, the zone they're in is pretty flexible in terms of what
Okay.
types of tenants can go in. So it's just to swap out the windows and roof and facade changes. And I think the back awning, you had talked about that.
Yes.
That blue awning, which is in need of.
That's when that says
In
Citibank.
need of
you're gonna
removal.
fix it, yeah.
Yeah.
But do we have to see that? We
It
don't
might
have to
just
see
be
that.
ARB,
Yeah, I
unless
don't
you
think
have
we
a
can see
tenant
it.
that requires a special permit. We can certainly show you what the ARB is looking at, but we'll see what the final plans are. If
And we
there needs
wouldn't
to be
see-
a new awning or entrance or bump out, depends on the final design.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to see it unless there's some special tenant, which you're gonna build it out before you get a tenant anyway.
Right.
You're doing the work anyway.
We are, and agreed. As our first read at it, I didn't think, we're certainly not changing the use. And we're not
Unless
at this
something
point.
comes out and touches the ground.
Yeah, it's a medical office use, which is the highest parking density anyway. And just for the record, when we changed the parking regulations town-wide, you're a little bit different because you have a mixed use, there's a parking agreement.
Yes.
So if you did the numbers again, you're gonna do different numbers, but it's still a mixed-use parking agreement.
Yes.
So that's great, good news.
And
And
then-
congratulations on leasing it up. To lease off of plans, 125,000 square feet, that doesn't happen a lot around here.
It doesn't, and we were nervous headed in, and this is, the market where both retail tenants and residential tenants take their time. Thank you, and it's been, knock on wood, we're able to close it out with success. I would say, I do want to say there was one more item, and again, haven't talked about this in any great length, but at the entry point, the vehicular and probably primary pedestrian entry point, the drive aisle, the site access. We have a lot of cars coming and going there, and we have already seen many near misses. mostly vehicular, but not vehicle on
This is coming out
pedestrian.
where Gregory's Coffee will be?
Yeah,
That's-
between
yeah.
Gregory's and Coffee.
And 40 Heads Road.
We're gonna engage our traffic engineer, take a look at that, and then meet with the town to
I noticed that too, yeah.
look at some ways to calm that traffic or reconfigure what's happening on the site, because it's already, like I said, we've already seen enough near misses, and while we only have 10% left, 10% of the retail space left to lease, we probably have 50% unoccupied right now because they're all in build out. So
I mean,
once we get into
that's-
full swing, that problem probably only becomes worse.
So that's you doing traffic calming, which is either like, Belgian blocks or some kind of thing.
Yeah, signage and striping and maybe some curb work, maybe eliminating a parking space to open up the sort of the alluvial fan at the top so people can see cars coming from the direction of Equinox. There's a couple of different concepts,
Okay.
so.
Because it's, the goal is now Palmer's is finally under construction.
Yes.
If we can get a complete sidewalk that starts at Chase and goes all the way to Goddard School, and it's all connected,
Love it.
that's a home run.
Absolutely.
That's what we're after.
Absolutely.
Because you're gonna have a lot of kids in strollers walking out, and if you look at it now, it's
Yep.
like an obstacle course,
Yeah, it is.
and if we can.
And
get-
hopefully we've got a lot of kids with strollers walking up the street to the Goddard School.
You got that right. Any questions for Patrick and anything? No? Fantastic. And if there's anything we can do for you, and I know these guys are working their tail off, and hopefully you're getting all your red tape and approvals from, from the fire department and the building department as fast as humanly possible. I know they're working hard on it too.
All of the above. It's
Thank
been
you.
great.
Great.
We've got to stop tripping false alarms. Fire department has been there more than they care to be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, I think we're really close to finishing. Investor doing, deliver on regarding public hearing closed tonight. You want to punt that for next week? Put it at 10. Yes. Right?
Okay?
There's definitely no chairman's report tonight. Is there a director's report?
No.
Okay, no director's report. We got 4 sets of minutes that we can go over. You want to go through the minutes real quick? To me, they were pretty straightforward. And the best part about the first set of minutes, which is from February 28th, Stephen O'Malley's recused. Whatever you do. I'll go over it. It was, I think everybody, I was not here, and Jeff Ball was not here. So it's George, Amy, Adam, and Mike. Most of it's got to do with Contentment Island, the 2 Contentment Island, and 3 Canoe Trail. Then a resolution for 23 Crimmins Road. And what else was on here? Yeah, Contentment Island, we closed that night, and 2 Canoe Trail, we closed that night. So, questions, comments, typos, scrivener's errors on this one? Anybody catch anything? I'm saying no, Mike's saying no, George is saying. Nope. Good. Amy's good, and Jeff and I are recused.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Mike makes a motion, George makes a second, all those in favor? Done, 4-0. Thank you. One
Steve,
nothing.
staff wants to pull back March 7th. We read something today that we're like, we want to double check on.
That'd be great, okay? March 14th is Ravani, Riley, Barsanti, Adam, and Mike. What's the first thing I did? That was the first night of the vet center on Old Kings Highway. Was the main thing. Then we had the 2 Harbor Road. I think that's the one with the big, is that the one with the big,
25 Harbor, the house and the pool in the back, and they changed the landscape.
the landscaping over the water, yep. What else? Then we had Searles Road was a punt, we didn't do anything with that one.
That's the snow day.
Then we had Contentment Island, George read that commission, and that's the Contentment Islands resolution, which we can't change anyway. Then we had the Canoe Trails resolution, we can't change that. That's already set. And then that was, Harbor Island was the review, we talked about that and deliberated that. Questions, comments, typos, scribblers errors on this one? Motion to approve, Adam made the motion, looking for a second, Mike makes a second, all in favor? 5-0. The last one is March 28th, which was my sister Amory's birthday. The big thing was 7 Cedric, that application. It talks about a lot of different aspects that, I want to double check and read that again to make sure we don't miss anything on that one. Then I think we had Harbor Island's resolution was in here, we can't change that. And then, what was it, then the next meeting of what was going on. Did anybody catch anything that jumped off the page on 7 Sedgwick's notes? I know we're gonna see those guys again, but that was a long meeting.
Yeah.
So I may read this one more time.
Yeah. We'll pass on that as well.
We're passing that.
Can we approve the resolutions?
Well, the resolutions, we already
Oh, the
approved it.
resolutions are there.
Yeah, we already
Okay,
approved
so
it.
we'll put those on for,
Yeah, let's
not
put
next
those
week,
on
but the
for
week
next
after.
week.
Okay.
Yeah.
March 27th, March 28th, and March 7th.
Okay, and I think that's it, right? That's what I have here. Any other business regarding 2/3 vote? We don't have anything else?
What about that
Oh,
two-thirds
yes,
thing
we
you
have
put on
one
the
other
email
business.
today?
We have the quarterly report within your packet. I don't have a copy of that. And then there's one item for other business, which Fred has a copy of. It's a request from the Piedmont Club.
Oh, yeah.
So I need a motion to go into other business to discuss it.
Get a motion to go into other business. Adam makes a motion, looking for a second. George makes a second. Other business. Piedmont Club wants to put a tent in their parking lot that they had the last few years relative to COVID. They want to do it again now that even COVID's done. They need building department approval, so it's down.
Right, they would need a temporary tent permit, but they need P&Z site plan approval as well, and kind of a modification. If you want to call it a modification of a special permit, you could. Oh, here it is, Fred. And I think they even included in this letter, tent will be limited to 10 PM. You know, most nights, I've never been there, but I guess many nights it's 9 o'clock, but the latest they would ever go would be 10.
That was the other thing I did read in that, it said the club closes at 9, but they want to keep the lights on until 10.
There's certain nights that it stays open. I'm on the board, so I
That's
can
you,
back
for
myself
you.
out of it, but.
Isn't that what it says?
It says the use of the tent will be limited to 10 PM. On a normal night, the club is usually closed by 9. You know, and I've never attended the club, but I think it varies. Fridays and Saturdays, I'm sure, are a little different than if there's a birthday party or event versus a random Monday or Tuesday, nothing going on, or bad weather, you know, a lot of variables here.
And how close is it to the neighbor's house? What was it last, same spot as last time, right?
It's not, I mean, it's from one neighbor, 50, 60 feet, and then there's the neighbors in the way back, but you gotta go through the whole parking lot to get there anyway, so.
Right, and the highway noise is, the highway making the noise from the highway is louder than anybody talking or whispering.
And we've not received any complaints.
No, I did ask Mike Vitti, who's the president of the Piedmont Club, and he said the last complaint he got was, kind of the night he went before the commission. I think you were here, Steve,
Yeah.
George might have been here, where there was, and since then, they put up a little screen for the downhill neighbor, so he can't see as much.
They never did the bocce court.
They have not done the bocce court, it got approved right before COVID.
Yeah.
And that may be something they do in the future, but
And the tent is for social purposes, for the summer?
for the summer, I think Mike talks here about
I didn't see the letter on there.
less than 180 days, less than 6 months.
Oh.
So today's April 18th.
May
They-
the 7th.
It would be gone by October
Can I
18th.
just see that real quick?
Sure.
Are they allowed outdoor music?
That's what it was.
Are they allowed outdoor music?
Thank you.
I don't think we've ever had outdoor music, but
I was just thinking if there was gonna be a neighbor complaint, it'd be the music's too loud.
They have a wedding?
I mean, they're allowed to have the general din of people congregating,
Right.
so,
They've had it for the last 2 years.
and there haven't been any complaints.
There haven't been any complaints, there's no parking issues.
Give it to them.
Okay. Motion to approve as requested. Adam makes a motion, Mike makes a second. All in favor, you're recused.
5-0. Got it, thank you.
5-0, 1 recused.
I'm saying,
Okay. the next meetings, I'd just like to go over that. Anything special going on April 25th?
Yes, it's a full public hearing night. We have 5 or 6 hearings, including, I think, the Grove Street, the new melting pot tenant, which will be a steakhouse. That's one of the hearings. We'll get you all the materials in your packets this Thursday.
I was asked about a year ago if they want to have dedicated seating for the restaurant on the public plaza.
Yes, they are in the
That's a Board of
process of,
Selectmen
they're
issue.
working on that, working their way with the ARB, and that's something I'm sure we'll talk about next week.
It's not in our purview, right? It's Board of Selectmen, they control it.
That's correct, and the ARB is looking at that issue. I'm just trying to see what else is on the agenda. But Tom Maslin's representing the applicant. Fred, anything, there's a house on Long Neck Point Road, of course.
Yeah, we have five or six public hearings scheduled for that night, so it's going to be a fairly
Full night.
busy night.
And then May 2nd is the continuation of 7 Sedgwick. So that will be a full night if they get revised plans and go ahead.
Are they on the agenda or docket to go to ARB yet?
They are, we did sit down with Mr. Maslin. I sat down with him, talked to him about a couple concepts. He's acknowledged that they will go to ARB, but we have not seen a revised or updated plan because we talked about the numerous issues brought up at the public hearing.
Okay. Then the last question relative to that, and I was going to pull some other information. Don't they have to have a public plaza to get the 3rd floor?
I think that's what Bob's trying to do with this incentive units.
Yeah, that's
amendment.
where, but that's a text amendment then.
Right,
Right, the question is it a 3rd floor or is it just 2-story building?
right.
Is it a 2-story building on stilts?
That's what we've been trying to figure that out for 2 years.
So,
It's a 3rd floor.
It's a 3-story building.
so we're gonna continue to, and we'll know better as it gets closer, but next week, full meeting. The week after, we're scheduled to meet, and then the week after, May 9th, likely maybe 1 or 2 hearings. A lot of people get pushed off, get their act together, so we have 3 or 4 people that have been pushed.
Fantastic. Okay. With that said, before 10 o'clock, to get Karen out of here on time, we have a motion to adjourn. Mike makes a motion as usual. Jeff makes a second. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, TV 79. Thank you, Karen.